Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to foot.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Hello, dissidents. I should say, hello, dissidents. Very formally, we are on Sunday morning, a Sunday morning edition of the Do Dissidents podcast. Keaton Weiss here with Russell Dobular.
Hello, Shaz.
We're going to do a very formal show today. This is Sunday morning. We're competing with Meet the Press and what else? Face the Nation. What's the ABC one? This Week. This Week, America, This Week, something like that.
We are also competing with the crew of Toth.
That's right. That's right. Russell, as you noticed, has changed locales once again. He's got the NOLA beads on, the Mardi Gras beads, back in New Orleans. So our
I
first
have the
stint,
much sought after shot glass.
There you go. Beautiful. Beautiful. So that's where Russell will be for the next few days. But then, thanks to all of your guys'
what I did
efforts,
for these beads.
Thanks to all your guys' efforts, Russell will be going to London next week to cover the Day X hearings, the Julian Assange hearings. So Russell's bouncing around the world for you guys, going to L.A. for the Jimmy Show here in New Orleans, and then across the pond next week. So lots of exciting stuff going on. So you're there in New Orleans for about a week now?
I'll be here for a week, going to London, coming back here. I will be at this place, which, I didn't think this through when I was looking at which Airbnb to go to. There's no office set up here. That's why I'm on a couch. There's no desk. I have like this on a garbage can right now.
There you go.
Like that was the best I could do. That's going to be a pain in the ass for a month. I might actually buy a chair and some little desk or something.
Yeah, like a little well, is there a kitchen table you could set it up?
No.
No? Wow.
No, there's a coffee table.
But
it's too low.
Yeah, my wife and I lived off a coffee table for a while. The first two apartments we had in the city weren't big enough to have any kind of dining setup, so we just ate at the coffee table. And so maybe that's the case there too.
It just hasn't happened before. I've never rented an Airbnb that didn't have a desk, so I didn't think of looking at that.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing you could take for granted. Hold on. 1 second.
Exactly.
779 800 in the YouTube
Damn.
chat. Thanks all for being here. Great crowd this morning. 821 in the YouTube chat. 488 filing in over on Rumble. Lovely to see you all.
All right, John to Emily actually finally said something funny.
What's that?
Russell Dobular is on the run.
Russell Dobular is on the run. Good one, John to Emily. So we got some stuff we got to cover today, obviously. It is Super Bowl Sunday. That's why we are here on the early morning time slot, and then Russell's going to some parades in the afternoon. We were looking for a fun Super Bowl segment to do, but there really is none. So if you're curious for my Super Bowl pick, this has the feel to me of one of the more boring games. I sense Chiefs high 20s, 49ers mid to high teens. So I'm going to say 27-17. That's just the number that jumps out to me. So that's what I'm saying. Niners might get another field goal, maybe 27-20, but that's what I'm thinking. Mid to high 20s for the Chiefs, mid to high teens for the 49ers. Not particularly interesting. Obviously, the most interesting part is going to be the collapse of the country after the game. The Swiftie coup is on for tonight. So enjoy America while you have it, folks, because at the end of the Super Bowl, it all goes down. The plan is hatched. That's it.
Well, she said if he wins, she's gonna fillet a jalapeno popper right in the stands. Right?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That's the bet. It's the bet.
Oh, you know, how crazy would it have been if she were actually booked for the halftime show this year, and it just happened to be that she was dating one of the players on one of the teams during the Super Bowl, and she's playing halftime. Who is playing halftime? I don't even know who's playing halftime. Does anybody in the chat know who's playing halftime? I don't even know.
No idea. It's not her.
They should have bumped whoever it was and said, "Sorry, you're out."
It's not her.
Swift
She's not gonna preview her jalapeno popper act.
Yeah. Nobody knows. Nobody knows who's the halftime show. Interesting. Maybe we're on a 20-second delay, and answers will come flooding in later.
I mean, we have the smartest audience on YouTube. Somebody's got to know.
Somebody's got to know. Somebody's got to know. I think we're Usher. Usher?
EMP.
That's not a joke?
No.
Wow. I thought somebody was saying Usher as a joke. And then
it's Usher. It really is.
And then the responses kept flooding in. Usher can play a halftime show now?
Really?
That seems crazy. What was like Matchbox 20 booked? Like they couldn't find another act that hasn't been relevant for 25 years? Usher?
I mean, they should get Madonna back, but have her ride out on the little tricycle.
Yeah.
We're going to play a game.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Usher, wow. Shows you how out of the loop I've been. I had no idea. No clue. Yeah. There we go. Yeah, Jezzy, Nickelback. Right. Yeah, exactly. That's what I thought it was.
Couldn't get the Stones. The Stones are touring.
Yeah, couldn't get the tour. Stones. Couldn't get U2 to come out and sing an ode to Israel at halftime. Couldn't. None of that.
But Usher, I still haven't found. Yeah. I'm gonna try. I'm hopefully gonna see the Stones here at Jazz Fest in May.
Oh, they're playing Jazz Fest? They've played Jazz Fest a bunch of times, haven't they?
You see, I'm like, I'm on the road, so I'm like, I've always wanted to go to Jazz Fest, and come on, man, this is probably the last chance to see these guys. I mean, I know they always say that, but come on. One of them's got a kick at this point. They're in their 80s now.
I'll tell you, when you look at Mick Jagger
since I'm floating around anyway, kill two birds with one stone.
Not only is Mick Jagger still playing, he's still going. Like, he still does the whole physical act. He's still running around the stage, jumping, kicking. It's insane. The guy's in his 80s
he's still
now, right?
He's still banging teenagers, that guy.
Yeah. 18-year-olds, of course.
No, you see his girlfriend? I mean, not his girlfriend's like 35-ish.
Yeah. But big age gap for sure. Rock and roll, as they say. Over 1,000 now in the YouTube chat. Thank you all very much for being here. All right, we got some segments that we got to take care of. Got some business to do this morning. What a weekend of news. We happened to be hosting the Jimmy Dore Show on Friday, which was the day after, I would say, by far the biggest news day of 2024. One of the biggest news days in recent memory. You had the Supreme Court signaling that they were going to overturn Colorado's move to take Trump off of the ballot. Then you also had, obviously, the Tucker Putin interview drop. But then you also had this very damning non-indictment from the special counsel in which Joe Biden was described as an elderly man with a poor memory. And as you all know by now, this is old news by now, Biden went out and did a press conference trying to dispel that notion that he was, in fact, an elderly man with a poor memory, and did quite the poor job of that. That didn't stop the media from losing their minds over this. I put together 3 clips. This is sort of a trilogy of denial, we'll call this, from the mainstream press. First, here's Morning Joe, featuring a very special cameo by friend of show and literal dickhead John Heilman.
That there's no doubt in my mind that that this special prosecutor could have written the same report without using these words: elderly man with a poor memory. I'm like you, I'm a simple country journalist.
Yeah.
I can find a lot of different. I can find a lot of different ways
John,
to say this.
Yeah, you know what?
Without
I'm a
saying
simple
something
country
like that.
lawyer.
Yeah.
John, I'm a simple country lawyer, and I know. What's the headline? What should the headline from this report be? Not indicted.
Not guilty. Right.
Not the evidence to indict him. Yeah. It's not there. And the clear differences, as he wrote, between Trump and Biden. That should be.
Well, one of the clear differences between Trump and Biden is that Biden has no brain left, which was part of why they chose not to indict him. It's like you can't indict a 90-year-old woman for burning her house down with her own stove because you can't prove in court that she did it on purpose because she's not all there, right? It could have been an accident. You can't prove that to a jury. So part of what differentiates Biden from Trump, and part of the reason why they chose not to throw the book at him, is because he is an old man with a poor memory. That was part of it. That wasn't gratuitous. That was instrumental to the case.
It's just incredible. Not just their total lack of dignity, but the mindlessness, similar to our current president, of anyone who could watch this. And I've seen libs running around with Joe Biden is a good man. Barbara Streisand tweeted out. I quote tweeted it.
Yeah.
Some people are old at 50. Okay, yeah, sure. He's old at 79 or whatever the fuck he is.
I think he's actually 80 now, yeah.
He's old. He's old. Like, what point are you making? Some people are. Yeah, he's one of those people. He wasn't at 50, but he is now. Like, what fucking point are you trying to make?
He's also the president. So people who are old at 50 don't become
heard
president.
Of the Streisand effect? Has she never heard of it? It's like Dennis Leary said. Lou Gehrig died of Lou Gehrig's disease. How does he not see that coming?
Right.
Come on. Barbara, don't you realize everything you say gets a negative and equal reaction from the public?
Indeed. We're at 687 over on Rumble. Beautiful.
Yeah, baby.
All right, let's keep going. We got more to watch here.
Wait, hold on, John. Hold on, John. Do you think that this guy is so naive? You think this guy is so stupid? Do you guys think this guy is so clueless that he didn't know by putting words in that Donald Trump would love for him to put in there, that wasn't going to be the headline for the New York Post, that wouldn't be on every... The guy knew. He's a Trumper who knew.
Right.
So why in the world would the Justice Department allow that dicta to be in there?
Why in the world would the Justice Department, led by Merrick Garland, allow that dicta to be in there? Could it be that they want to get Biden out of the race? Getting ahead of myself. That's the next segment.
I swear to God, man, whenever you do these things where he's going off, and then you look at Mika, she's got that sly, mischievous smile. She has got a remote-controlled butt plug up his ass. Look at how he's sitting. Look at how she's smiling.
Well, you watch this.
It's gratuitous.
Well,
and he knows it's gratuitous, and it was bad faith. It was bad faith that he did it, and it was even worse judgment that the Justice Department allowed that garbage to be released.
That garbage, it's garbage, he says. That he's an elderly man with a poor memory. Garbage. Again, who do you believe? MSNBC or your lying eyes? Right?
It is funny, basically being in a commentary space. And you got the low production values of YouTube, and you got the high production values of MSNBC. But a lot of the techniques are very much the same. What he's doing there, it's what I have come to call barking at the moon. It's a very good way to get your audience ginned up. A lot of commentators do it. A simpler way to put it is faw outrage. Like fucking Joe Scarborough doesn't understand that Joe Biden's brains are leaking out his ears. Like, he really doesn't know that.
No, neither does John Heilman, right?
Come
Neither
on,
does
man.
Mika
They're
Brzezinski.
throwing chum to their brain dead audience, and that's his job, to get far outraged, right? Can you believe that he didn't know that? And this is for all the dumb motherfuckers to go, and they're gonna do their little typing on their Facebook. Joe Biden is a very good man. This is terrible what they're doing to him. That's it, man. That's how they make their living, man. That's how they fucking. That's how they eat. Everybody, as James O'Keefe, as friend of show, James O'Keefe recently revealed, they all know it. They all talk about it. All of these insiders talk about it when the cameras are off. That's the team that they bat for. So they got to go up there and pretend they don't know. That's all that's going on there. And John Heilman, you actually met him.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You actually met him. He wouldn't give you the time of day.
No, he was not interested. Not interested. He was there on a job, and that was it. I asked him to see his tattoo.
He didn't want you to see his scorpion there.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, I actually did get a peek of it in that clip there. So he doesn't cover it up for the cameras. He just puts a suit on.
What
it's
is
hard
it?
To see.
What is it?
I don't know. It's like some
cartel?
green tattoo. I don't know. It's like it almost looks like one of the army tattoos, but it's not. I don't know what it is.
Stolen valor.
But there he is. Yeah, exactly. Next, part 2 of our denial trilogy. Paul Begala on CNN. Cool as a cucumber. The unshakable Democrat operative Paul Begala. Here he is.
Paul, it does not appear that the Democrats have a plan B, meaning an alternative to Biden should the pressure just be too much and he decide that he isn't going to run or maybe some other reason. Would it be wise to at least have some sort of backup plan?
No. He's running. By the way, he's winning some token opposition. Well, serious opposition. Dean Phillips is a
Can't
good
shake
man.
this
He's
guy.
losing in polls to Trump.
This guy's what you call a pro. He's a pro.
Okay.
Cannot shake this guy.
I just want to point out, I know a lot of people in our audience are struggling, working 2-3 jobs. This guy is a fucking multimillionaire for offering pearls like this.
Yeah. No, not at all.
He is. And so that's the alternative, right? He doesn't need Leidinger. He needs Henny Youngman, the old comedian. They asked him, how's your wife? He said, compared to what? Every sentence out of his mouth for 269 days needs to be, and Trump's a threat at the end. It's good. Happy birthday, Aunt Tilly, and Trump's a threat, right? Am I old? Yes, I'm old, but Trump's a threat. This is how Edwin Edwards, the corrupt governor of Louisiana, beat David Duke, the Klansman. He had a slogan that said, vote for the crook. It's important.
Right.
So I say, win one
They
for the
seem really
geezer.
convinced here.
Like, he just needs to say Trump is worse. And most Americans, not just Democrats, think that's right. So nobody unites the people of Earth like a threat from Mars.
No.
And that's what he needs. He needs that external threat, which is existential. That will make people then say, okay, they're not going to say he's young and vital. They're going to say, yeah, he's old.
This guy looks really convinced.
Yeah.
We seem like we're in really good hands here. Yeah, this can't be wrong. No, there's no evidence for that. He's losing in all the national polls.
Right. No, the American people know that. They know that's right. That's okay. It is a tough gig to have to go out there and just pretend that what is in essence cheerleading for a political team constitutes an actual political analysis. But he seems like the kind of ballless wonder who doesn't lose too much sleep over being a professional liar.
No, he's been friends with Bill and Hillary Clinton for 35 years, despite all that they've done. So obviously, this guy is just totally unshakable. That's what I mean. He's the ultimate pro because no matter what, he will go and toe the party line. Does not matter. Does not matter whatsoever. And, this line, well, compare me to the alternative, right? How am I compared to what? That's a difficult case to make under any circumstance, as Paul Begala, a veteran political operative of many decades, no doubt knows that it's very difficult, if not impossible, to beat something with nothing. The first time that really ever happened was in 2020 because of the unique circumstances under which the vote took place.
Right.
But that's especially difficult. That is an especially difficult case to make, when you're asking to be compared to the alternative as some apocalyptic threat when you are funding and cheering on one of the most grotesque mass murders of the last 100 years. That is a really difficult case to make under that circumstance.
Dude, I literally saw two old biddies posting, Joe Biden may have made his mistakes, but he's a good man. And then an old biddy chimes in, you know what? I don't think he's made any mistakes. And then the person who posted it goes, you know what? Me neither.
Yeah,
like, these people are out there. These people are out there. They exist. It's hard to imagine that, but they do exist. And that's who this is for. You know, I mean, who else would watch this? I can't. I've told you, I can't watch this shit without like pain. It's like physical pain to watch these people because it's such transparent deception. It's such a pack of just lies and performing for the cameras and just propaganda and establishment talking points. There's absolutely nothing of value in it other than to parse out what elites want the zombies to believe at any given moment. That's really the only news you can get out of it. Oh, this is what they want us to think.
Yeah, indeed.
But the other guy's a threat to my Social Security, to my abortion rights, to my democracy.
Do you think that would be effective?
No, because people already think that, Jake.
No, of course not. Now, that's a Republican operative, to be fair, but he's right. He's right. That is good objective analysis right there. Okay, last one, Volume 3. This took place the night of the report. Here's the MSNBC Power Panel, Lawrence O'Donnell, Rachel Maddow, and Ari Melber, talking about how, well, of course Biden said over and over again that he didn't remember things. That's just what you do under questioning.
I'm going to be fascinated when I can get into all these hundreds of pages
he
to
does
see
the bark at the moon
what is
routine
it
here,
that
too.
makes you stress the lack of memory in this particular case, where you have this completely cooperative witness, and there has never been a witness under oath anywhere being questioned over a period of years of that witness's life where they don't say, I do not recall. It is impossible to ask witnesses questions where they answer will not be, I don't recall. And if you don't get that response, it just means you didn't ask enough questions.
Can I speak just on that? Because I had the same thought. It's fairly standard lawyering to advise people, even when in doubt or you think you might remember. If you can credibly say, I don't recall about something, that's a standard legal advice. And it has nothing to do with the age of the person giving the deposition.
When you're under oath, you can't lie. If you do recall, you have to say that you can. But if you can't...
Exactly. Well, that's the whole point, right, Rachel? That basically, because of those standards, the extra burden that you don't want to get anything wrong means you err on the side of saying, I don't recall, I don't remember.
So look, if you're guilty, you're often advised, or even if you're not guilty, you're often advised, as they just said, to use I don't recall as much as possible when you're under questioning, because they can't use against you what you don't recall, and they also can't prove that you don't recall what you say you don't recall unless you fuck up after the fact and mention something that you should have recalled at the moment. So they're basically saying their theory here is that no, actually Biden was outfoxing the prosecution by claiming not to recall certain things as a good legal maneuver. Not that he was lying, but that he was being a good defendant and basically doing the smart, savvy thing when you're in hot water. Yeah, that's right. We all buy that, do we not?
No. People always forget when their son died.
Yeah.
Or when they were vice president as part of a KG legal tap dance. These people are just, it's never been more evident than in this case that they're simply professional liars and propagandists, because it really is the emperor has no clothes fable come to life. And somebody, and Bob Costas, was it Bob Costas who actually made that comparison? Yeah. We're in that territory. I mean, clearly everybody knows you have a president who is senile. You literally have a president who is senile, and they're all just going to jump up there and cover for him. It reminds me, and they're doing it so furiously and desperately because they can't have their audience of zombies wake up.
Even when this is the evidence. Let me just show this. I wasn't going to show this, but while we're here, what the hell? This is the guy they're talking about.
And I'll take some questions.
President Biden, something the special counsel said in his report is that one of the reasons you were not charged is because, in his description, you are a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory.
I'm well-meaning, and I'm an elderly man, and I know what the hell I'm doing. I've been president. I put this country back on its feet. I don't need his recommendation. It's totally
How bad is your memory, and can you continue as president?
My memory is so bad, I let you speak. That's my
memory has gotten worse,
Ooh.
Mr. President.
My memory is not good. My memory is fine. My memory, take a look at what I've done since I become president. None of you thought I could pass any of the things I got passed. How'd that happen?
That's the guy. If my memory was good, I wouldn't let you speak. Yeah. Yeah, like I said, like the evidence is right in your face, and they're saying, no, you didn't see that, basically. That's the level that they've sunk to now. That thing you just saw, you didn't see it. Like the Men in Black thing. Psh, out of your mind.
Right. Well, and I always find it most fascinating that it is like going to church for the people who watch this stuff. They're being given the catechism. They're being given the explanation for this thing that they heard that contradicts dogma. They're being given the way they're supposed to look at it. That's how this stuff functions for the elites, right? I mean, they send out these people to frame it in a way that all of the zombies that watch them, usually elderly, frankly, I'm not beating up on boomers. The numbers are the numbers. That's who watches this, a subsection of that demographic. And yeah, because they saw that. And you can't just let that fester, right? You have to give them a framing where they can walk around and no, that's just, you don't give up everything to a lawyer.
Right.
Nobody does that.
Right.
I was watching Lawrence O'Donnell last night. He was talking about that. That's what lawyers tell you to do. Everybody knows that. You know, these Trump people, they're idiots.
That is what lawyers tell you to do, but that doesn't take away from the evidence
framing.
you've just seen. Right, exactly. Like, both things can be true. Like, yes, you are advised to say you don't recall whenever you can. That doesn't mean that that guy you just saw on camera, that the world just saw on camera, was doing it for that reason. Right, obviously.
Exactly.
And that is the most obvious thing in the world to anyone with a functioning mind.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. It's church.
Yeah.
It's church. Well, see, the reason God let that happen is because of Satan.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Now they have a way to look at it that they can still conform to the religion. They won't ask too many questions.
All right. Pat Donahue, thanks for the €5. Congrats on 40K, lads. Thank you. Thank you all for getting us to 40,000 subscribers. Thanks for getting us to over 2,000 live viewers here on Sunday morning in YouTube world. Thank you very much. Hit that like button. Let's get even more in here. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that follow button over on Rumble there. How is Russell enjoying LA? Did you do any of the movie studio tours? I really enjoyed them when there was an 80s movie there, as an 80s movie fan, pardon me.
All right, so I did.
Oh yeah, you never told me how you liked the studio tour of Universal.
All right, so I did Universal Studios. I gotta say, all right, so I have a two-part view on this. Universal Studios, if you want to go there with like your sweetie, your wife, your kids, sure. If you want to go there as a middle-aged man on your own, there's not much there for you, frankly.
Not even the tour?
It was all right.
Yeah.
It was all right. I was like, yeah, the studio tour is going to be the one thing you're going to do that you're going to feel like you're into. All right. So this is the thing. Like I did like their main attraction is the Jurassic Park ride.
Right.
Okay. And again, I'm not criticizing it. I'm not saying it's bad if you want to bring your kids, right? But if you're like a grown ass fucking man, you're not going to be like, wow, that animatronic dinosaur. Wow. I'm so into this. Like, I didn't care. Like, I did it. I'm like,
what about the drop? You get a rush out of the drop?
Whatever.
Yeah, see, I don't really like rides, so I think that drop was pretty intense. I'm not a ride guy.
I didn't get to the mummy ride. Maybe I would have.
Oh, the mummy ride is fun. That is a very fast one. Yeah, the mummy ride.
Maybe I would have felt differently about that one. The Jurassic Park ride was just like, ooh, look at these very fake-looking dinosaurs.
Yeah, it's a bunch of dinosaur
animatronics.
That
was
with
like
a drop
whatever.
at the end.
But again, and I did like Harry Potter and the whatever the fuck.
That's
through,
a fun
like
ride.
The castle. Yeah, like all that. Like that's what I'm saying. Like I'm not saying it was badly done. Although this is the one thing I would say, because so like Harry Potter, for a certain generation. Like I started reading them in the 90s because they had a big crossover adult audience. That's a big part of why they became so successful. But for people who were the right age, Harry Potter is like Star Wars for millennials and younger, right? It's their core myth that they grew up on. So they did a great job creating the world of Hogwarts and the village and the town and all that in terms of the design. But so I was trying to think, and I guess they do have something like that at Disney in Florida, but they fucked it up because of Kathleen Kennedy and made it about the sequel trilogy that nobody cares about instead of doing like the original trilogy. But they do have like a Star Wars world with the cantina and everything, from what I understand. Okay, but this is the thing. All right, so the exterior looks really cool, right? Like it looks like you're in that world, right? Then you go in, man, they're just selling stuffed owls and fucking keychains. So to me, I'm trying to look at it like, okay, so what if I were 12 and a Harry Potter fan? How would I react to this? I mean, I guess obviously I'd be more into it, but it seems to me that has to kind of take you out of it when you get beyond the very authentic facade and you walk in and there's a lot of tacky shit they're trying to sell you. And I imagine the Star Wars world is the same in Florida. You probably walk in that cantina and they're trying to sell you a bunch of Star Wars memorabilia.
Yeah, I haven't been to the Florida park in many, many years. Monkey Harris, thanks for the $1.99. Appreciate that. Chris Bishop, haven't seen you in a while, Chris. Welcome back. Thank you for watching. If George Stephanopoulos wore Mardi Gras beads, maybe I would have watched the Sunday news show more. There you go. Beautiful. The WikiLeaks fan. Hello,
Let's just say I showed
dissidents.
him why the North won the war.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Hello, my favorite dissidents. Hello to you, WikiLeaks fan. Thank you very much. Cool Blue, this is the last Super Bowl during Biden's presidency. Very likely true. Almost certainly true.
Yes, I'd say that's almost 100% true. No matter who actually ends up president, it won't be him.
Exactly, even if it is a Democrat. DC, thanks for the $2. Cocaine is a miracle drug, apparently. Yeah, works for some. P. Walker, truthful NY Post front page causes liberal brains to melt. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. This is gratuitous. Why they have to do this? Please keep in mind Barbara Streisand's initials. Yes, thank you, Cool Blue. Good
You
one.
know what? I never put that together. Thank you.
Good observation, though. Joe Biden is the oldest man stereotype ever, says Jeff the Curator. Lots of new super chatters this morning because it's a new time slot. So nice to see some new faces here on Sunday morning. Kristen, thank you for that. Levon Ohanyan, thank you for the €2. He's a poor memory dressed up.
Wears his wall boot like
There you go.
a crown. It's one of my favorite songs.
He's a poor memory dressed up as an elderly man. Yes, good point. Okay, let's take one more here. We got some Rumble rants too. We don't have Jake today in the booth, but I am doing my best to field those Rumble rants. I have caught some, so we will get to them. Richard Law Bister, the mainstream media taking the emperor has no clothes to new heights. Legacy media's time taking people for fools is over. Seems like if this doesn't break some people, I don't know what will. I do not know what will. Dave Delaray.
It's just like I said, man. I'm seeing them coming out and defending Biden, and it's just the level of stupidity. And I must say, for anybody who read my article, in keeping with that, I'm primarily seeing that from people I know in the arts community. Like it is so tragic that the people we need the most at this moment in society to really help to define the era and explain things to people have just been reduced to just these absolutely moronic MSNBC propagandists. Like, you're an artist, man. I mean, the cool part of the gig is being a gadfly. That's a big part of the attraction, right? It's certainly not the money. Like, who needs you? Like, if people can sit in the comfort of their home and listen to the very professional and good at her propagandist job, Rachel Maddow, spouting these talking points, the fuck are they going to go to some fucking cold, cramped fucking black box in East Village to hear you say it?
Right. No, of course. I've thought that for a long time. Give Biden some credit. Both Mexico and Egypt have pyramids after all. That is true. Thank you, Dave Dillery. That's true. That's true.
We have the best people.
That's true. You don't think about that. The Aztecs had the pyramids and the Egyptians had the pyramids.
They both had the pyramid. Nobody talks about it.
Nobody talks about it. You
except
think you hear about that more.
Except on those ancient alien shows, they talk about it. That's the only place you can get the truth.
Yeah, exactly. Let's take some Rumble rants here. Oh, this one wasn't a Rumble rant, but I thought this was funny. This was in the pre-show. This better be good. I'm risking going to hell for missing my Sunday obligation to the anti-Jesus killers. Yes, we hope it's worth it. We hope this is worth eternal damnation for you.
We didn't want to kill him, but he was talking shit.
Yeah, right. What are you going to do? Can you ask Jill Stein to talk about her campaign? I think she already has over 5% in federal funding. Well, you have to get over 5% of the vote, not just the polling. So there was a poll that had her at 5 recently.
Oh, was there?
Actually,
yeah. Was that true?
Seemed to be an outlier. Cornell's at 0 in the past couple of polls, literally 0. So that's why she must have taken all his votes.
You almost made me do a spit take, man.
Yeah. Well, she had a good answer on Israel. I might cover that with Kit, too. She had a good Israel answer that went somewhat viral.
Did she?
Maybe that gave her a little bit of notoriety, at least in the Twitter world.
What'd she say?
She just basically talks about how a ceasefire doesn't go far enough, about how you need to negotiate a more permanent peace. So she's basically talking one-state solution, right of return stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't been, of the third party alternatives, we really haven't been beating up on her. We've just been questioning the Green Party itself. Like Cornell's 5 minutes in the Green Party peeled the onion back, and everyone kind of got a look at the layers, and it didn't look good in there.
Yeah, I mean, look, on a policy level, it seems like Cornell and Jill Stein are pretty similar, and they're by far the best on a policy level. But
sure,
that makes it all the more offensive that they're just wasting people's time by not having their shit together, running against each other, splitting the vote. It's like that's what pisses me off about it. It's not the policies I don't agree with. I agree with them almost all of the policies. Anyway, Thubby, you guys are tied with Tinfoil Hat with Sam Tripoli for having the best intro music. Shit slaps. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, we'll take some more super chats and Rumble rants later on.
He's a musician.
Yes, indeed. And now I have access to, because we got access to a licensing library for the Jose Vega documentary, now I have access to a lot of other cool music, so I'll make some even cooler countdown intros.
I'll have a subscription now?
Yeah, we have a subscription now. And so now
cool.
I'll even have some cooler countdown intros, and now we can use some cool music when we do our own video projects, too. We'll have access to, like 30, 40,000 tracks, and they're pretty good, actually, a lot of them. All right, folks, let's move this along here. We just saw the media's reaction to the special counsel report on Biden's mental faculties. Kamala Harris, though, went viral for giving her own response here at the podium. So let's go to the kneeling tower of bullshit, Kamala Harris.
I'm glad you asked. Listen, I have been privileged and proud to serve as Vice President of the United States with Joe Biden as President of the United States.
They scripted this.
And what I saw that report last night, I believe is, as a former prosecutor, the comments that were made by that prosecutor, gratuitous, inaccurate, and inappropriate. October 7th.
Oh, that's a good way to go.
Israel experienced a horrific attack, and I will tell you We got the calls, the president and myself, in the hours after that occurred. It was an intense moment for the Commander-in-Chief of the United States of America, and I was in almost every meeting with the president in the hours and days that followed. Countless hours with the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State,
Burst out laughing.
the heads of our intelligence community, and the president was in front of and on top of it all. Asking questions.
He was in the room with the cabinet officials in the days after October 7th. That took you about 45 seconds to say. And what was the great skill that he showed in coordinating the Israeli response to October 7th, which has now killed almost 30,000 people, including 11,500 children? This is really where you go when making the case for Joe Biden's fitness for office, is just basically sleepwalking through a mass murder, which is basically what he's done. This is what you go to.
Well,
Let me
also,
tell you something. Joe Biden never once mistook Israel for Greenland. Let me tell you, he knew exactly what country we were talking about when we were talking about what happened on October 7th.
We asked him, Joe, do you know where you are? And he said very clearly and precisely the situation, man. So everyone took heart from that. No, the fact that this speech is structured and clear and she doesn't laugh, it's very obvious they wrote it and rehearsed it.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
This is totally, because Kamala would be, Joe Biden is a man.
Yeah.
He is a man, and he is the president.
Yeah, that would be the answer under normal circumstances. Yeah.
So the fact that this has a beginning, a middle, an end, a logic, a flow, there's no way that she's saying this extempore.
Yeah, no, this had to be prepped.
And requiring that America's military and intelligence community and diplomatic community would figure out and know how many people were dead. How many are Americans? How many hostages? Is the situation stable? He was in front of it all, coordinating and directing leaders who are in charge of America's national security, not to mention our allies around the globe. For days, and up until now, months. So the way that the president's demeanor in that report was characterized could not be more wrong on the facts and clearly politically motivated, gratuitous. And so I will say,
same script,
that when it comes to the role and responsibility of a prosecutor in a situation like that, we should
right-wing
expect
operative Merrick Garland.
Yeah.
that there would be a higher level of integrity than what we saw. Thank you. Thank you for the question.
Notice, I mean, this will be clipped separately, but in a previous segment, we showed, the media reaction, Morning Joe's reaction. Gratuitous, politically motivated, bad faith. It's hard to tell where the government ends and the media begins.
Well, you know what's funny, because when it first dropped, before they got their narrative together, before the marching orders came out, and they do come out, the White House does send out press releases. That's how they get their orders. And of course, we know from a lot of what came out from WikiLeaks that they talk to each other, right? They literally call up people at the network to complain.
Debbie Wasserman Schultz called Chuck Todd after he did a monologue criticizing Hillary Clinton for something and said, we don't appreciate. Oh, it was that the DNC was treating the Sanders campaign unfairly. That's what it was. And Wasserman Schultz, head of the DNC, called and said, we really don't appreciate that coverage. And he stopped talking about it.
Right. Well, we know Donna Brazile gave Hillary Clinton debate questions in advance.
Debate questions, yep.
So we know they coordinate, but there was a minute there where Politico dropped an article about how Merrick Garland actually released this report. And it was delving into why he released it. That article fucking disappeared in seconds. I saw it in my feed and then it was gone. And then all the focus went onto the hired gun. He does not make that decision to release that report. Merrick Garland does. Now that plays to what you're saying, that it's all part of a setup to get rid of him. Yes. But boy, the fucking corporate media people didn't get the memo, or they got a different memo, or Biden's people are playing 4-dimensional chess here.
Well, here's what I think. All right, and this will parlay and will segue rather into the B part.
To be clear,
of this.
Not Biden. We're talking about his people, who we
people.
all agree are competent. They pushed this fucking mummy over the finish line. So.
Right. No, Biden's team is actually quite the competent team. They wouldn't have gotten him elected the first time if they weren't, right? They wouldn't have gotten him anywhere close if they weren't. So let's go to some more video this morning. We showed the media meltdown earlier over the Biden special counsel report, calling him an elderly man with a poor memory. A very embarrassing report for the White House. They sent Biden out that night to try and refute that claim. It obviously went horribly wrong. Kamala Harris came out and gave her indignant defense of Biden. But we're going to play a couple of clips here, one from Vivek Ramaswamy on Fox News and then one from Bob Costas, who are both saying more or less the same thing, that Biden's got to go. Here's Vivek Ramaswamy saying what he said many times throughout this campaign season, that he does not expect Biden to be the nominee.
Bad day for President Biden. What do you think?
Look, I think the number one takeaway, Trace, is this. Joe Biden will not be the nominee. I said this last year. People dismissed it as some type of conspiracy theory. Today, I think it became that much more obvious. Play this out. Biden's own DOJ and special counsel is effectively releasing a report that undermines the case for him to actually be a candidate for the U.S. presidency, right as Biden's poll numbers are cratering. We have to do the math, skate to where the puck is going, not fall for the deflection. But I do think what they're planning for is to sideline Biden as the nominee, trot in a different puppet instead. That's the most significant takeaway from tonight.
I think he's absolutely right. I said this on the Jimmy Dore show. That day unfolded so horribly. Why, of all days to do a press conference, would you send him out for a press conference that day? The guy's only done 83, I think it's now 86 interviews since taking office, which is far, far below Trump's number, far below Obama's number. Trump, I did 300 in the same window of time. Obama did a little over 400.
And they used to complain that Trump was avoiding the press.
Yeah.
That Trump didn't give enough interviews.
Yeah, this guy's done less than a third of the interviews of Trump.
To be fair, okay, I have seen them bitch a little bit about that with Biden. Nowhere near what they would with Trump.
Right.
But it's been mentioned. There have been articles and features about it.
No, of course. So it's well known and well documented that they've basically hidden Biden from the media through most of his time in office. So why, of all days, to send him out for a press conference would you pick that day? And why would you let him take questions that day? He never takes questions at a press conference. Not only did you let him take questions, but at the very few events where he has taken questions, you've seen it. These photos have leaked on social media. He has a list of reporters to call on. He reads it right there. He says, okay, NBC, you're next. Okay, over there. Okay, ABC, over there. That wasn't the case. He came out, he read a 60-second speech, and then the reporters start screaming questions at him. There is no way in hell that his campaign thought that it was a good idea to send him out there for that. That was an act of sabotage because they understand now, especially that he has totally alienated the Arab vote and the youth vote, that he is uniquely unable to win in November. It's going to be an uphill battle for any Democrat, but at this point, the bottom has just fallen out of his base.
Which don't underestimate the power of that, because it's killed the Republicans in 2 elections since that decision.
Well, right, but that's all the more reason why I say a generic Democrat might still win because of that.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like,
Right.
yeah, it's an uphill battle, but maybe not as much as we think.
No.
Because everyone's been surprised, including ourselves, at how much power that issue has had in the elections that have taken place since then.
Yeah, well, there was a horrible story this week out of Idaho where this couple had a miscarriage and they couldn't get the care that they need. I mean, it was just absolutely horrible. So, yeah, with that, of course, the generic Democrat without the baggage that Biden has on Israel, Gaza, and the student debt bullshit, they might be able to squeak it out. Not likely, but certainly possible, right? With Biden, it's not possible at this point. And so they need to swap him out for somebody. And the last thing the Democrats want to do is give their voters a chance to pick the nominee. So they have to keep Biden in the game through Super Tuesday, because then he will clinch a 50% delegate majority. At that point, it is in the delegates' hands at the convention who the nominee is. The voters are not a part of it anymore at that point, because Biden's delegates can then go and give their support to Newsom or Whitmer or whoever. But I think that's the plan. And if you don't believe...
Let's go full H.A. Goodman. At the convention, the delegates are going to take a good look at Marianne. And they're going to swing to Marianne.
Yeah, Marianne's got this in the bag. It will be decided at the convention. But look, if you don't take Vivek's word for it, here is about as mainstream a figure as you can get. Here's Bob Costas on the Bill Maher show saying it out loud.
When it comes to Biden, this is like the truth that no one until very recently wants to say out loud. But my friends will tell you I've been saying it for 4 years. This is Emperor's New Clothes stuff. Joe Biden should have run on a firm promise that he would be a one-term president. The only reason he is president is that he's not Donald Trump. Then the Dems could have gotten a lot of people up in the bullpen, and they could have sorted through those people.
Some of them got upset about it.
Yeah, some of them took it hard, but most of them didn't.
President is that he's not Donald Trump. Then the Dems could have gotten a lot of people up in the bullpen, and they could have sorted through those people. If Biden's hubris is such that he doesn't understand the best interest of his party and, more important, his country, then he has to be shown the door, period. Because if Trump is a threat to democracy, and in many ways he is, so too are the Dems, who are in danger of being as feckless as the Republicans have long been shameless if they're going to send this guy out there.
Okay, if guys like that are saying it, you know it's a real possibility. Because Bob Costas, he's a sports commentator. He's made his living on mainstream, shows, doing, big games and this and that. This is like Regis Philbin coming out and saying, Biden's got to go. Like guys like this don't stick their neck out and take an unconventional position unless it's not so unconventional anymore. So I'm telling you right now, once guys like this start saying it, it's a likelihood. And I'm telling you, it's a likelihood. This was one of my predictions for 2024. I took it on a lark, at the time. Now it's not a lark anymore. Now I think you're looking at a 75 to 80% chance that they push this guy out. How could they not? We're doing this show on a Sunday morning. I can't watch TV while I do the show. It's quite possible as we speak, there are Sunday morning pundits saying the same thing.
I don't see how they can completely avoid it. It's interesting because it's a pattern. When he was running in 2020, the pundits were saying it. They didn't want Biden.
Right.
Once they saw that it would be Bernie, all of a sudden it became verboten to say that Biden was losing his mind. Now it's a stutter. You're able to, they went for their favorite hide behind, an identity issue. They gave him an identity. He's got a stutter, right? Now you're oppressing people with a stutter if you say anything about Joe Biden being senile. But hey, man, Andrea Mitchell said it on the air. Cory Booker. These are not what you would call anti-establishment firebrands. And then the order came down. It's going to be Biden, and they flipped on a dime. That became a verboten topic, Biden's mental competence. They started talking about it again coming into this election season.
Right.
And then once it became clear that he himself was not going to do the right thing and just not run again, then it became verboten again. Then you couldn't talk about it again. Oh, there's nothing wrong. Look at Trump. Look at Trump. He just mixed up this and that. Yeah, well, Trump's an ignorant baboon. Of course he mixed those things up, but it doesn't mean that he's mentally incompetent in the way it does with Joe Biden, who's been in politics since he was 7.
Right.
When he mixes these things up. But now it's funny because the narrative they've been ordered to pump and the visual reality that they have to compete with is just becoming such a threat to the overall credibility of anyone who takes the position there's nothing wrong with him, that you're going to get a few people kicking out the fence now.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see a lot more of that. You might be seeing a lot more of it as we speak. We're doing this show on Sunday morning. We could be missing a big headline. There could be, George Stephanopoulos right now saying the exact same thing for all we know.
I'm telling you, with the American people.
They couldn't
Joe was
do that
always
thing.
stupid.
Right.
Now he's stupid and senile, and that's a bad combination.
Exactly. Yeah, he'll come out. You could deny. Look, the true believers, the diehards, the MSNBC partisans, Paul Begala, they came out. They tried their best to say, no, this isn't happening. Everybody knows this is happening. Everybody knows that this guy cannot make it to November. That's why I just can't visualize him being on the ballot in November. And it makes perfect sense.
I think you're right at this point. I do believe they thought they might be able to run another basement campaign of some kind, but it's just not possible. He's the president now.
Yeah.
You can't hide him to the degree you'd need to hide him.
No, of course not.
How are they going to put him on a debate stage with Donald Trump?
Yeah, no, forget it. And even beyond that, the headwinds are just it's too much. It's too much. You have the Michigan Arab voters tanking him in the state. That boycott effort alone is not just, this might cost him Michigan. No, he's losing to Donald Trump by an average of 5 points in Michigan right now. We did a little bit of this math last time. At the beginning of this cycle, the conventional wisdom was that the big 3 swing states were going to be Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Arizona. 2 out of 3 wins was basically the wisdom at the beginning. Now it's Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, Michigan. And the thing that puts Biden at such a disadvantage is Biden needs 3 out of 4 of those states. Trump only needs 2, right? Because now Michigan is in question. And so, come on. Just those 4 states alone, not to mention Nevada, Biden's losing. It's just falling apart. It's falling apart. They need to reset with a different candidate who's younger, who's more competent, without as much baggage, and hope that they could trick the SJWs into forgiving the genocide in Gaza, right? Because, Gavin Newsom wasn't there, so you can't blame him, right? That's what they have to hope for now.
Right. And when they're pressed on it, they've got some wiggle room to Dennis Kucinich it.
Right.
Yes, we need to talk to Israel, but we need to support the Palestinians. Is that enough? Probably. It shouldn't be, frankly, because if you say that, you're basically saying, you would have done the same thing if you were there.
Right.
But it's just the way people's minds work. He wasn't there, though.
He wasn't there.
And this one was.
Right. Exactly. Pickle the Pirate, thanks for the $5. Politics is the new religion. Partisans worship their prophets with the same zealotry as your average ISIS recruit. We're re-entering the dark ages. Indeed. The amazing Blumpkin. So, is Begala pregnant with an unwanted child? Human paraquat. Yeah, he's got the big Lebowski quotes coming, as you should with that avatar. The PMC is making excuses for 4 years of weekend at Biden's. Yeah. Yep. Indeed. President Magoo, 2024, says DC.
Biden, you've done it again.
Back from the road. Thanks for the $9.99. They eliminate every alternative choice. Then they look at us and say, who else are you going to pick? Right, exactly. Our politicians run this country like the mobbed up construction site. Yeah, exactly. They have no primary, no debate. Nobody else is allowed in. And then once the primary process, quote unquote, is over, they say, now you have to compare me to the alternative. Who else you got?
No, they don't like Biden. They thought they tried to make Kamala happen from before she announced. Yeah. I saw the fucking PMCs talking about Kamala no sooner than Hillary lost, because the kinds of sources of information they go to were already telling them that they had picked Kamala.
Right.
And, the voters had other ideas, so they fell back on Biden. They never wanted him.
No, of course. Of course. That's why they had like 20 people in the race.
Right.
Joe Biden is a silencer, not a boomer. Silencer 2845.
We looked that up once. Yes, you're right. He's silent generation.
Silent generation, yep. You fucked up, Russell. The mummy ride is the best one there. It is a fun ride. That is a fun one.
It was late in the day, and I was over it. But yeah, I guess because I will probably never go there again. So I should have, but I didn't.
Well, if you go to the Florida one, it's there too.
If I go to the Florida, and apparently that one's bigger. The mummy ride there is bigger.
Oh, okay. I think I went on both. I didn't notice a difference, but that could have been just me. Love you guys, says Old Dave. Thanks, Old Dave. Thanks for the $20. Glad you're hooked up with Jimmy. Thank you, Old Dave. Appreciate that. Russell will be back co-hosting the Jimmy Dore Show from April 1st to the 10th. And I might come out to L.A. to maybe sit in on one of those. My family might be planning a trip out there.
Really?
Well, my uncle lives in Long Beach, and so we were asking, if we could come out there and sort of, bum at their house for a week.
Oh,
and I could do a couple, yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
that would be awesome.
Fun. Yeah, we're thinking about it. Because with the baby coming in July, it's going to be our last chance to make a trip like that for a while. So,
yes.
yeah. So,
that would be so cool.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun.
So, what, you're waiting for an answer from your uncle?
No, he said we're good. So, yeah, I guess we're doing it.
Fucking do it.
Yeah, I guess we're doing it. I guess it's on. Lorian Brightbill, thanks for the $4.99. Thanks for the courage. Thank you, Lorian. Lance, thank you, gents. Thank you, Lance. Appreciate it. Blunts and Otters, no Biden Super Bowl interview. Good thing Putin was available. Yeah, at least we got something. They should just re-air some of that before the Super Bowl. That would be funny. Let's go to a Rumble rant. I would go for a Bark at the Moon bit featuring some Ozzy and or some Metallica's and Justice for All, the roast Cornel West fake political party, if you can avoid getting demonetized and or sued. If we use less than 5 seconds, we could do a Bark at the Moon thing, just like we have the Iron Maiden
like we
thing.
have that. But he's talking about a video parody.
Oh,
I've got, look, at this point, I have, but it would take a lot to do it. Like, I really want to do like a parody news station that's like a lib news station. We've talked about this a lot, where we do, sketches of like what that news station would cover. It's just, you got to get people who are talented enough to do it, who don't mind being canceled.
Right.
That's what's hard about it.
That's the difficult thing. You got to get people who are good, and people who are good tend to have a certain politics or a certain fear of people with a certain politics. Because if you're good, you have something to lose. That's the problem.
Dude, I get DM'd all the time from people I used to know in the arts who haven't drunk the Kool-Aid, who are like, thank you for what you're doing. I wish I could say those things.
Right.
They're out there. They're just fucking keeping their mouths shut and their heads down.
Yeah, exactly. They have to. Blue Bay, thanks for the 400, whatever those are. I've never seen that symbol before.
Yen?
Is that? I don't know. But free Julian Assange. Yes. Thank you. We're going to be, so Russell is going to be in London next week for those day X.
Audience. What currency is that?
Yeah, what currency is that? I'll put it up on the screen. What is that? Let us know.
We got the smartest people.
In the chat, we have the smartest people. The brilliance abounds in this genius VP, says Scott George. Yes, indeed. Thank you. All right, there's a Rumble rant here. James O'Keefe, I won't put that on the screen, but blanked a guy to let us know Hyena isn't going anywhere. At least not without kicking or screaming and laughing inappropriately. Yes, well, he just acted like he was going to. It's unconfirmed whether it actually happened, but man,
those are
shit
rupees.
for those.
I should have known that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't know what the logo was.
Thank you, guys. All right.
Thank you.
Well, but what I do know is that means it's about $4.
There we go. A true prosecutor such as myself would keep an innocent man in jail for free labor. Yes. Kamala Harris, yes. Good point. Henry DeShazo, pardon me, my friend. Thank you for the $5. My mind has been racing all morning, and it didn't help that I spent the last 40 hours on TikTok trying to describe how fucked we all are. Russell and I are thinking about doing some very weird TikTok videos where we...
Like we really should. Look, I'm here at Mardi Gras, and that's not appropriate for the channel. We don't want to clog up the channel with like, hey, the parade, right?
Yeah.
But we can throw that shit on our TikTok.
Yeah.
I
And if they kick
actually
us off,
might
who
start
cares?
doing it today.
All right, there you
Because
go.
I'm going to be like, for the next 3 days, I'm going to be at these parades.
There you go. There you go. That's an idea. I dig that. Okay. Let me just.
So, folks, join our TikTok. What do we just do? Dissidents on TikTok, right?
Yeah.
So join our TikTok. I will start dropping some like Mardi Gras videos.
Yeah, apparently
no
some
boobies,
of our stuff.
No boobies. Don't get excited. It'll be very tame parade stuff.
Fun stuff. Yeah, that's a good use for
Food,
the TikTok.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, indeed. Lots of food in New Orleans to take pictures of. Lots of food porn out there. Kenman, thanks for the 279. Look forward to your show every time. Thanks. Thank you, Kenman. Look forward to you joining every time. Where's skill? Luckily for Biden, no brain cells needed to simp for Israel. Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Putz the Mouse. Good morning, guys. Have I mentioned I love you? I think you have, but we can hear it again from you, Putz the Mouse. Thank you, Putz
We'll
the
take
Mouse.
it. We'll take it.
We'll take it. For sure.
Makes up for the people who come into our chat and are like, Keaton, he's the biggest asshole. And Russ, I can't even watch that guy.
Well, you do. What do you hear?
I know, exactly.
What I do, what you do. Anyway, folks, we got a big crowd in here. 2460 in YouTube, 1147 over on Rumble. Hit that like button. Let's see if we could set a record this morning. Thank you very much for being here. It must be a shitty guest lineup on Meet the Press. People are like, fuck this. We'll go watch these guys.
I told you we were going to cut into their audience.
I know. We're going to get an angry letter now.
Yeah,
that's the way it goes.
Like handwritten on index paper.
Yeah, exactly. Folks, here's a segment about the economy. We're going to go back to Morning Joe for a second time this stream because they put together a segment around the new Washington Post article explaining the stubborn price of groceries. And so let's take a look.
Pew Research, 72% of Americans say they're very concerned about the cost of food and consumer goods. Our next guest is taking a look at what's driving those prices so high. Joining us now, White House economics reporter for the Washington Post, Jeff Stein. So, Jeff, what is it?
Yeah, grocery prices are still climbing from when Joe's dad bought them. It's incredible. We've seen inflation come down from 9% to 3%, huge progress, but a bunch of idiosyncratic factors, including floods in California and the hurricane in Florida and other international shocks, including the war in Ukraine, have meant that even though some consumer prices for things like used cars and gasoline have fallen, grocery prices remain really sticky. They rose by 12% 2 years ago, which was the highest number in over 4 decades.
Okay, so floods, hurricanes, war in Ukraine, so climate change and Vladimir Putin, those are the two famous scapegoats of MSNBC here. But as you can see here, Biden takes aim at grocery chains over food prices. So I wanted to look into this because before we got good enough at doing this to the point where I could do this for most of my living, I would shop grocery stores. I shop Instacart, DoorDash, things like that. And so I'm very conscious of grocery prices. And yes, they are stubbornly high. So let's see how much the grocery chains are at fault. Seems like they are culprits to a point. But if you actually look, in 2020, the grocery chains' profits skyrocketed for obvious reasons, that there were no restaurants to go to. I mean, you can get takeout at a handful of places, but you couldn't dine out that year. So it makes sense that their profits would soar. But then in the past couple of years, as inflation really kicked in, because inflation really kicked in 2021, 2022, grocery chain profits remain high, but they've actually started trending down back to, high levels, but within their normal range. So you can't really blame the grocery stores too much. Can we blame climate change? Can we blame the war in Ukraine? Well, to a certain extent we can, although this then doesn't make that much sense, that food companies have reaped record profits amid the hunger crisis. So maybe it's not the retailers, maybe it's the manufacturers, maybe it's the companies themselves who are exploiting droughts, bird flu epidemics, hurricanes, in the Ukraine war as an excuse to keep supply low and jack prices up. That's my working theory. We're going to get into this a little more, but go ahead.
Yeah, I was actually very curious about this because now where I'm staying, and this was intentional, I'm staying in like a real neighborhood in New Orleans. This is not a tourist area where I am. It's not a bohemian artsy area that, you know, that tends to be synonymous with gentrification. So you can't really go by prices in a place like that, like 7th Ward. I would define that way off the French Quarter. But this is like a neighborhood. So I went out food shopping when I got here last night. Yeah, I was surprised, man. Like what I paid for eggs, orange juice, milk, pretty much what I would pay in Harlem.
Yeah.
And this is an economy. I think the average fucking income in New Orleans is like 26,000 a year or something. So how can people afford New York? Literally, they're paying the same as in New York.
Yeah. No, it's just insane.
Where
It's absolutely
the
brutal.
median income in New York has got to be about 60,000 a year.
Right. Yeah, it's got to be way higher.
By another 5% last year. And this is the number one way that people say that inflation is still hurting them, far more than housing, far more than gas. As Joe was saying, this is the critical economic issue, and there's no really easy option for the Biden administration. They have approved the biggest expansion of food stamps in generations, and that has been huge for keeping, the bottom 40 million or so people from really facing a much bigger spike in food insecurity. But if you're right above that threshold in sort of the lower middle class, you're not really seeing that benefit, and you're also being crushed by, these huge increases. We've seen some price normalization, lettuce, eggs, tomatoes, apples, all those things have come in the right direction, and the White House is really eager to continue to see that progress as some of these, as I said, idiosyncratic supply chain factors play out. But
idiosyncratic supply chain factors. Okay, so
and I just want to point out how he opened with a joke minimizing the problem. Imagine that food prices have gone up since Joe's father was shopping.
Yeah. Idiosyncratic supply chain factors. That goes on for 4 minutes. We're not going to watch the whole thing.
With that level of empathy, he really belongs at State doing their press conference.
Yeah, he could take Matthew Miller's job when Matthew Miller resigns and has to check into therapy, for all the horrible lies he's told. Let's take a look at some of these profits here. Kraft Heinz, some of their brands, Heinz Ketchup, Oscar Mayer, Jell-O, Ore-Ida, the potato company there, Lunchables, etc. Up 448 net profits, 255 to 887. Conagra brands, 219 to 342. Marie Callender's, Ready Whip, Slim Jim, Orville Redenbacher, Hunt's. Food companies are taking advantage of this very precarious moment. This is from Time Magazine, says Irit Tamir, director of Oxfam America's private sector development, which seeks to fight inequality to end poverty and injustice. They are hiding behind a very good story of the pandemic, inflation, and the Ukraine war to say that they need to raise prices, but they are actually just creating a smash and grab for profit, exploiting and exacerbating inflation. And it's not just packaged food manufacturers that are experiencing a recent profit boom thanks to rising prices, says Joe Maxwell, the president of Farm Action, a nonprofit that campaigns against corporate influence in the farm industry. Some food producers and suppliers are also reaping the same rewards. Cal-Maine Foods, the largest egg producer in the U.S., reported that its revenue doubled and profit surged 718% last quarter because of higher egg prices. So let's see that graphic there. This is the top of the list, making bacon. Notable food companies with massive net income increases. There's Cal-Maine Foods, from $40 million to $323 million. Their brands include Egglands, the famous egg brand, Lands of Lakes, Farmhouse, and 4Grain. The article continues, the company that we just mentioned there has pointed to decreased egg supply nationwide due to avian flu as the reason for higher prices and record sales. The avian flu, which is tearing through poultry farms across the U.S., wiped out some 58 million birds in the last year. But Farm Action believes that there's another culprit, price gouging. You think? You think you're going to explain that from avian flu? No, that's a company knowing that there's an avian flu, knowing that they can put signs in the stores. Because I literally saw signs in the stores. We apologize for the high price of eggs. There's an avian flu outbreak. Oh, there's an avian flu outbreak. Well, if you were really doing the best you could for us under these circumstances, why did your profits spike over 700%?
Right.
700%. This is why you can't put it on the grocery stores, because no doubt they're making money, but they're actually making less than they did in 2020. The real culprit here seems to be that the food producers, given the supply chain issues, have chosen to choke supply and raise prices rather than try and fight through whatever supply chain issues exist or supply issues exist, or level out their prices to keep profits flatline. 718%.
Well, in this, for people, we have a very viewpoint diverse audience, from commie to Nazi. We'd like to say that's going to be on our next T-shirt merch, from commie to Nazi. Some people are very, pro capitalism, and very often very similar to the communists. What they're talking about is this very ideal vision of how capitalism is supposed to work versus how it actually works in the real world if you actually try to apply it. So the theory of capitalism is that this can't happen, right? Because your competitors will undercut your prices, and in the end, those prices will come down, and it'll benefit the consumers and the society. The competition will act as its own price control. But it doesn't take into account what Marx was correct about, that in the late stages of capitalism, the wealth has consolidated into fewer and fewer hands, and they use the power that gives them to control the government, so that you wind up having this completely deregulated capitalism, or really a capitalism that is regulated against competition, that is regulated against those free market forces. So from the, I think it was the Washington Post article about this, that, you're down to just a few food companies that supply most of the food.
Right. It's like the cable companies or
right.
cell
So
phone
what?
companies.
You think these guys don't talk?
Right.
I mean, it's illegal, but you think they don't talk? You think they don't meet up at the golf club? Hey, man, don't fuck it up for everybody. Keep the prices up here. Blame it on COVID. Blame it. We have a unique opportunity to make money hand over fist. And people got to eat, right? People got to eat. Of course.
And when you have the kind of control over the market that a company like Eggland's Best has, you don't even have to coordinate. You don't even have to call a meeting. What Eggland's Best charges, that becomes the set market price. Right. Because if some small company wants to undercut them, good luck. If one or two companies does it with with much smaller scale distribution, that's not going to hurt their profits at the end of the day. And if too many companies do it, well, then they can just lower it a smidge, right? It's not going to hurt them. It's not going to hurt them. Look at the room they have to operate here. Look at the room they have to operate here. So worst that's going to happen is what? You're going to force them to come down a few cents a carton?
Right.
Because they just don't have the power. There just is not the competitive power. There's no one who can operate at that scale.
Right. And there's no mechanism for price controls, right? And really, look, I understand there are problems with price controls. Like, very often you're suppressing the marketplace, and then when you release them, you get this explosion in prices and you get chaos in the markets. This is really, if you want a capitalist solution, this is why we have antitrust legislation. But antitrust legislation is only as good as the government wielding it. You have to use antitrust based on the principle by which Standard Oil was broken up. Microsoft would be broken up. Apple would be broken up. Facebook would be broken up. You wouldn't have this this kind of a market for a few players to completely dominate all aspects of the economy. That's not capitalism, right? We can all agree on that. From commie to Nazi, we can all agree that's not how
all about bringing
capitalism is
people
supposed
together.
to work. I was watching Paul Begala, and the other day I was talking to Negi, who he used to come on the show once in a while. He's written a few articles for us. One of my best friends since high school, and his father, who just passed away, he was like a character out of a novel. He was an old school working class commie, like who used to hire himself out to get beaten up by the strike breakers.
Right.
And he raised his kids with a moving company, like this real like working class intellectual communist. So he had a very unique perspective on communism. And we were talking about it, and I was saying to him, like, look, the thing that the communists say that I have to agree with is they're the only ones who beat their capitalist class. Yeah, that's the selling point, but it's the day after that's the problem. I'm watching Paul Begala, and not that we would advocate violence for anybody, but when you look at what happened in the Russian Revolution, a lot of it was that. A lot of it was rage had so built up against people like Paul Begala, against the equivalent of that in that society, and the urge to go and do something about those people built up to a fever pitch. And once that momentum started, it had a lot of force behind it.
All right, let's move on. We got some more super chats to do here and some Rumble rants coming in here. Henry the Shazzo, nonsense. Vivek has done a shit ton of interviews. Just ask Glenn Ringwald. I'm happy to call you out on your nonsense. What do you mean? What did I say? Vivek has done a shit ton of... Yeah, I didn't say he didn't. I don't know what that meant. There is no separating Dees and Joe Biden. Election 2024 is likely to end up a Republican wave. Pickups for U.S. President and U.S. Senate. Holds for U.S. House. Thank you, Cool Blue. Shina Billy. Bob Costa spitting? Yeah, looks like it. Right in ceasefire or free Palestine, says Eric Husso. Appreciate that very much. A second for an object. You guys forgot to mention President Mushmouth popping on the Jumbotron to officials to officiate the wedding between Marilyn Monroe and Elvis. Appreciate you guys.
One of the creepiest things I've seen, maybe you've gotten this ad on YouTube. I think the campaign's over. I haven't seen it for a couple of weeks. They have an AI Elvis and an AI Marilyn having a conversation. It is the creepiest shit you've ever seen. Yeah. How you doing there, Marilyn? Hello, Elvis. It is as creepy as you would imagine that would be.
Wow. Yeah, I heard something about that, didn't I? Did you tell me about that before?
I probably did. Yeah. I've always been a pioneer. Yes, me too. Ooh. It's as creepy as Hefner being buried next to Marilyn.
Virtuoso, Biden could use another pandemic to distract people from his mental decline. Yeah, they could use something for sure. Biden has been president for a few years now. He's the leader of the Democratic Party. I haven't heard him stutter over these 3 years. Have you? I've heard him pause in the middle of a sentence and struggle to get a word out for sure. But again, that didn't seem to affect him in his previous decades of work.
Right.
A thing like that.
Nobody ever said Biden stutters.
Yeah, and a stutter is not just a physical thing; it's a psychological thing too.
Right.
So as you lose your mental faculties, it makes sense that a speech pathology like that could resurface. Because I didn't hear him stuttering in the debates against Paul Ryan or struggle to spit a word out, and I have seen that every now and then. So it's possible that has come back, but again, I believe there's a psychological reason for that.
Well, it wasn't until the DSM-4 that they had the subcategory of racist stutter.
Yeah, right.
He's one of the few people who suffers from that.
That's the thing. Yeah, it's a racist stutter. Exactly.
Yeah. You ain't black. Oh,
it's a stutter. Oh, man.
Yeah, it's a stutter.
Biden might drop dead on the stage during the debate. No way they'll let him debate. Yeah, they're already saying they might not do debates. But I think beyond that, it's just a matter of, can he keep it together on the campaign trail? Is there going to be a moment like the press conference moment every day, which there could be,
right.
Or at least a few days a week, depending on how many
there
events he
was
does.
The first time. When did he ever speak off the top of his head without making news in a bad way during that entire campaign? And then the pandemic happened. And it was a godsend for them. They were able to stick him in his basement and script everything he said. They didn't have to put him out in front of people anymore. Before COVID, that few months that he actually had to go out and campaign, he said something crazy almost every time. Challenging people to push-ups, dog-face pony soldier.
Oh, yeah. Nonstop.
Black kids are just as poor kids are just as smart as white kids. Like every time he spoke, it made news.
Yeah, no, it was nonstop. Absolutely. Kenman, thanks for the 279. Biden, Grandpa Simpson stories don't go anywhere. Yes. Henry DeShazo, again, thanks for the $10, my friend. In my universe, the next several months would be complete if Keaton came up to do an appearance. Fucking do it. You mean it out to Los Angeles? Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's pretty much in the bag that we're gonna go. Joe Boo, why do you guys act like voting matters? You know they'll install whoever they want. Snap out of it.
And Corn Pop was a bad dude.
Yeah, right. Let's take some Rumble rants. I don't understand how half the country is letting them shoehorn Biden into another run. The lefties, your type, and conservatives, my type, get it. Where are the liberals? Am I wrong? Well, yeah, they're watching MSNBC. They're watching Paul Begala. You know, they're watching Lawrence O'Donnell. That's where they are.
They do not. They, as I've said many times, most people don't have politics. They have virtue signaling. They are signaling that they are aligned with what their social group, as they see it, is aligned with. They only talk about politics as a way of signaling their alignment with those people. That is why they don't think through what they're being told on Morning Joe about, Biden being perfectly fine, because that's not what they're in it for. They're not in it to arrive at some kind of an objective truth. They're in it to be a member in good standing of a club.
Exactly. But now you see, like, when guys like Bob Costas come out and say the emperor has no clothes, that represents a certain breaking point. Right, where not all of them are going to snap out of it, but some of them will and already have. Folks, we got a big crowd in here, so I want to shout out our Patreon supporters. On our supporter scroll here, you can become a member of our show by going to patreon.com/DoDissidents. And joining up, our patrons get access to several perks. You get your name up in lights here on the show credits. You also get access to our patron exclusive member streams. We do 2 members only streams per month exclusively for our Patreon members, our paid Substack subscribers, and our paid Locals members. You also get access to our weekly post-show Q&As, which are over on Rumble. We typically do those every Sunday night because this is a Sunday morning show. We're going to do our weekly Q&A Tuesday night after the show this Tuesday. So I'll be on with our friend Kit Cabello from Harlan's Media on Tuesday night, and we'll be doing a post-show Q&A over on Rumble. Everybody has access to those Q&As, but patrons have call-in access. You can call in and say hello. You could sign up by going to patreon.com/DoDissidents. You can also go to DoDissidents.substack.com. Join as a paid member there, or you can join our Locals community at DoDissidents.locals.com. If you're watching over on Rumble now, that join button, big red join button right underneath the screen, that takes you right to our Locals page where you could sign up for as little as $5 a month and access all of those perks. Your memberships are what keep the show going. They are why we are adding a 4th stream later this month. When Russell gets back from London, I guess, is when we will formally introduce that, since Russell is making that trip this next week. And you guys made this possible by getting us up over 500 paid members. This is what helps keep the operation censor-proof and up and running despite whatever roadblocks come up in our way, thanks to these big tech platforms on which we are forced to operate. So Locals, Substack, and Patreon, it really helps us out a great deal. We try our best to make it worth your while. Our members are the backbone of our show. We say it every time because we mean it every time. And so thank you all very much for your support. We'll take a couple more super chats, and then we'll keep the party going here. Got a couple more segments to do before we let you all go for Super Bowl Sunday. Shina Billy, thanks for the $5. Jeff Stein blocked me. He's the guy who wrote the article and who was on MSNBC just now, because I asked if he had any comment about his colleague at WAPO attempting to smear Max Blumenthal. Really? And he blocked you for that. Wow. Interesting. I didn't know he was on Twitter that often, but I guess he pays attention. Interesting. Thank you for that.
Really?
Back from the road, thanks to the $4.99. Wasn't there just a class action against literally every chicken producer in America for price fixing? Wonder why food is expensive. Is that true? I'll have to look into that. I'll have to look into that story. But thank you, Back from the road. My secret weapon against inflation is dumpster diving. Have you heard of it? Good idea. I find tons of merchandise at all the big stores and donate most of it. Thank you, radical leftist extremist.
that's what the Manson family used to do.
Yeah.
Charlie taught them. He would take them to the back of supermarkets. Yeah, well, because they had a whole commune to feed. So they would just go and dumpster dive behind supermarkets.
They did have a lot of mouths to feed.
Yep.
You go and ride those rides, Russell. Welcome to the Disney Adult Cult. One of us. One of us. Thank you over there on Rumble.
I wouldn't hold my breath.
Oh, yeah. See, he says, no, I just meant 5 seconds of bark at the moon when a talking head goes off. Yeah, that's good. We can implement that.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I like that. I like
good
that.
idea.
You know what? Done.
Suggestion taken. This is from Ellen. Eggs is a part of NAFTA now, which means if enough small producers banded together and lowered prices, egg companies could sue them in the offshore NAFTA courts. Interesting. Actually, they wouldn't have to show price lowering affected their bottom line, only that it had the potential to do so. Thank you, Ellen. That is interesting. Thanks for that. Appreciate it. Appreciate you as always. Hef, how much would you say is price gouging versus inflation? Well, one thing leads to the other. Once they realize there's a supply chain, you never let a good crisis go to waste. And one thing I've noticed, is this something that you guys have noticed? I've noticed that produce doesn't last as long. You buy fruit now, it goes bad in a much shorter time period, has a much shorter shelf life.
Okay. It's interesting you say that because I was like, am I crazy? In LA,
you buy a pack of strawberries, it's moldy within 4 days.
The produce lasted longer in LA than it does in New York.
Well, it's because this is why. Okay, so that's interesting because they pick a lot of the fruit out in California. So my theory about this is that because of the supply chain issues, it's taking a lot longer to get the produce from where it's picked to where it's sold. And so by the time it gets to the store, it doesn't have nearly as long a shelf life as it used to when they got it from whatever, the orchard to the shop quicker.
Like things I would have expected to have gone bad already were not.
Right. You buy a thing of raspberries here, there's mold on them like 4 days later. Yeah. Like it doesn't last long anymore.
Yeah. Like the strawberries, I'm never able to get through all the strawberries.
Right. Yeah. They get moldy. That's true. I believe that. I believe we're on to something.
All right. So I put our team of researchers on this because I don't want to spread misinformation. So the per capita average income in New York City is $79,844. In Los Angeles County, it is $66,684. And in New Orleans, it is $54,463.
Yeah. So about 20% lower.
Yep.
Z-Water, thanks for the $4.99, and thanks to our researchers, whoever they might be. Safeway, Albertsons, and Kroger are merging. Prices will go up. What happened to the Sherman Antitrust Act? Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
No. Like our economy is dominated by corporations that are in violation of the antitrust laws. Disney should be broken up. One company, and it's not only Disney, to be fair. You have all these media conglomerates that have news stations, that have newspapers, that have radio stations, that have multiple movie studios. That is exactly the definition of an antitrust violation.
Yeah. No, of course. Henry DeShazo, there's a whole lot more unaccounted for income in NOLO. A whole lot of funneling from those legal industries migrated to Houston after the hurricane. Interesting.
I mean, I've definitely noticed a cultural change here, even post-COVID. Because I came like less than a year before COVID, and it's culturally it's different. It's different. It's like the last of the people who clung on through Katrina left.
Right. Yeah, no, it is. I started doing tours down there. I didn't go down there, but I did tours. I managed a tour company down there, but that was, yeah, no, that was later. For some reason, I'm thinking that was like 5 or 6 years after COVID, but it
Like
was
the
later.
things that I saw there then, like just cool shit, these fucking enormous spaces with just really interesting arts companies. Yeah, that didn't survive COVID, man. All those places closed. Like the shops that were interesting shops that weren't just like, yes, buy a mojo hand and a candle to put a spell on your enemy, right? Like the really cool places that weren't just aimed at that,
Right.
gone.
Well, because that culture was sort of on its way out anyway, to the point where
Yes.
most of the people who did that were older. And so, like, once you lock them in their house for a couple of years, like, they're just going to retire, right? Like, they're getting older anyway.
They retired and they left. Like this is part of what I'm seeing in the performance scene, because a lot of the artists who do, burlesque and, kind of neo vaudeville and that kind of thing, neighboring Louisiana were two states that stayed open, Texas and Florida. So they went into those markets, and by the time COVID's over, what are they going to come back here for? They established themselves other places.
Right. Exactly. All right, let's move on. We got a couple more segments that we're going to do for you guys today. We talked a lot about the Tucker Carlson Vladimir Putin interview over on the Jimmy Dore show the day after it aired. But one guy who was not happy about it is this guy here.
In the world, people are watching that.
Look at this fucking guy.
That, of course, is Richard Branson.
Yeah, it's Richard Branson. Oh, look at the caliber of leader in the West versus the East. You got Xi Jinping, you got Lula, you got, Putin there, who's able to talk for 45 minutes in a monologue about, Russian history dating back to the Middle Ages. And then look at this fucking imbecile.
Around the world, people are watching that ludicrous interview with Vladimir Putin conducted by Tucker Carlson, and we must not fall for this tissue of lies, above all for the notion that Putin is somehow fated to succeed in Ukraine. On the contrary, he is doomed to fail. Read about it in the Daily Mail.
Read about it in the Daily Mail. Well, we will. He was referring people to his new op-ed. Boris Johnson, Putin's interview with his fawning stooge, Tucker Carlson, was straight out of Hitler's playbook. I pray Americans see through this unholy charade. All right, this is a decent amount of reading. We're not going to read the whole thing, but we will get to the main points. When Tucker Carlson went to the Kremlin, he had a function well known to history. He was to be the stooge of the tyrant, the dictaphone to the dictator, and a traitor to journalism. I'm not going to do the whole thing in my British accent, but in his fawning, guffawing, slack-jawed happiness at having a scoop, he betrayed his viewers and listeners around the world. He didn't ask tough questions. He didn't ask Putin why even now he is using the most brutal means of modern warfare to maim and murder innocent Ukrainian civilians. Didn't take him to task for the torture, the rapes, the blowing up of kindergartens, all of it wholly unnecessary and unprovoked. Not once did he even try to dam the flow of lies from Putin. As I understand, and, this is just from reporting I've seen, there have actually been more Palestinian civilians killed in a few months than non-combatants killed in Ukraine over the course of 2 years. Now, that's not to minimize the death or the suffering of the Ukrainian people, because Ukraine, in their wisdom and their cravenness, have made a lot of civilians into soldiers, right? That's why the civilian death count is lower. It's because they're dragging people off the streets, as Russell demonstrated in a video he showed a few days ago on the Jimmy Dore show. So there are a lot of Ukrainian people, unfortunately, tragically, have lost their lives in this. But in terms of collateral damage and sort of civilian deaths, it seems that actually Israel has killed more civilians in just 4 months than Putin's army has killed in almost 2 years.
Well, this is, you couldn't find a more stark demonstration of Chomsky's formulation of worthy and unworthy victims.
Right.
He's saying this at a moment when the last redoubt of Palestinian civilians is about to be wiped out by the Israeli army, and you're feigning care for civilian lives.
Yeah. Yeah. Just absolutely repugnant. Instead, he gasped fanboyishly. He fancies himself such a literary in this with the, fawning, guffawing, slap-jawed happiness. Instead, he gasped fanboyishly as Putin's alleged erudition boneheadedly accepting the Russian leader's mixture of semi-masticated Wikipedia. Again, so full of himself. This is like if Thomas Friedman were a Brit and had power. An outright falsehood, such as the bizarre and ominous suggestion that Poland was somehow responsible for her own partition and destruction in 1939, as if Russia had no point in the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Okay, this is the main part here. This is the most important part, and there's more that we'll read. But he did not challenge the ludicrous suggestion that the UK government persuaded the Ukrainians to fight on rather than surrender to Putin's tender mercies in the spring of 2022. So what he's saying is that he didn't challenge the idea that Boris Johnson went out there to disrupt a potential peace deal. He's saying, I didn't do that. And I'll get into why he refutes that. But you notice Boris Johnson goes into no detail on that whatsoever. He just says that as a passing. And then goes on to, as every member of the Ukrainian government will confirm from Zelensky down, nothing and no one could have stopped those lion-hearted Ukrainians from fighting for their country, and nothing will. So he's basically saying, I didn't go there to disrupt the peace deal. I didn't persuade them. They didn't need persuading to fight on. They're lion-hearted warriors. They would have done so anyway. I was just there for moral support. That's basically his line. In the last 2 years, Putin has conclusively demolished his own thesis. By his reckless and criminal violence, he has proved himself completely wrong. He has revealed that Ukraine is not only a country, but a great one, and by his stupid miscalculation, he has helped engender a patriotic feeling that is stronger and more unquenchable than any in the world. If it's so unquenchable, why are they dragging people off the streets to go fight at this point? It seems like the morale in Ukraine is at a low, and I don't blame them. Like I said, I don't blame the Ukrainian people for this. This is their leader willingly making his people cannon fodder for the West.
Yeah, I don't know if we ever showed it, but a lot of people have seen it. It went viral. The Ukrainian singer singing to the troops, and they're so disinterested. They're so demoralized. They're so over it. They're sitting there on their phones, and they're just, and really, this is part of what makes this op-ed so deranged. He makes a point of saying how America can get great benefit from this without a single American soldier having to get involved. They're out of people. They're out of people. The last I heard, and it's probably gone up since then, the average age of the people on the front lines was 42 fucking years old.
Yeah.
Where are you going to wait until it's 50, 55? Like how, I mean, that's what Hitler did. At the end, it was children, teenagers, and old men.
Yeah.
They're getting there. So what the fuck are you talking about? It doesn't matter how much money and weapons you give him. And is that going to be the pretext that now Western soldiers have to go there? And are you going to take responsibility for that, you fucking scumbag?
Of course. And what does the future hold for this country now? Like, obviously, on its face, in the moment, it's a horrible loss of life. It's obviously tragic. But what's the future of Ukraine if there are no people who are able to reproduce left alive because you ran them all through this meat grinder for no fucking reason whatsoever, for a war that shouldn't have happened in the first place if you had just agreed to the simple terms? But of course, Tucker Carlson, go ahead, sorry.
Well, ironically, they'd probably have to bring in immigrants from the surrounding countries to repopulate it.
I mean, seriously, what else are they going to do? What else? Right. I mean, what is the future of Ukraine now?
Well, especially because the future for us is disaster capitalism. They want to go in and redevelop it. You need people for that.
Of course, of course. But of course, Tucker Carlson didn't make that point. He allowed the Russian leader to dilate for half an hour on the supposed historic non-existence of Ukraine and then gushed about Putin's encyclopedic knowledge. Tucker Carlson tried cutting him off 3 times, asking him to get to the point. Tucker said, why did you invade? And then Putin says, well, do you want to do a serious discussion or a TV interview? And then Putin went on, and admittedly long-winded. I mean, I found it interesting as a history guy.
I did too.
So, but I could see in Tucker's shoes in the moment, he may have thought this guy's just trying to run out the clock on the interview. If he's going to say he has to go after an hour and it takes 45 minutes to answer the first question, like, I understand why he felt that way. And so Tucker did try and cut him off. And he said, I'm not saying what you're saying is not true, and I'm not saying it's boring. It's just not answering what I asked you right away. Right? So he did push back. The idea that he just sat there and let him go is not true. Boris Johnson claimed that. Cenk Uygur claimed that in the Young Turks' comical response to this interview. It's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, it's just in defiance. Once again, just like the Biden thing, what you saw, you didn't see. We're going to tell you what you saw.
Well, not only that, but I've watched most of it now. Unless you are a real expert in that period of history and specifically that region, what the fuck are you going to say to that? Like, I, at this time, cannot take a position on the accuracy of that analysis. I would suspect that it's probably as biased as our take is, but from the other side. And I'd say the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, just based on my experience of these kinds of narratives. But I don't know. In terms of what he's talking about in regards to the Ukrainians being a distinct people. I mean, does Tucker know? I doubt it.
Well, I'll give you an
that's
example.
not the kind of thing where you can say, unlike Bill Maher not knowing what he likes about Gavin Newsom, it's not something you could say, well, he should have known that. This guy's getting into fucking Yaroslav the Fourth and shit. Who knows that?
Of course.
That you could really feasibly push back on that on its own terms. He pushed back in the only way that he could. What does this have to do with the question? But he couldn't. What do you expect him point for point to debate the Alsace-Lorraine in 1842? Who can do that?
Well, I'll give you just an anecdotal example. I spent most of my life thinking I was a quarter Russian when, in fact, my grandmother's people were from, I guess, a part of Russia that was since recognized as Ukraine, right? So now it turns out I'm a quarter Ukrainian, but my family never saw it that way. Again, what that means, I don't know, but that shows you there's some confusion there, right?
Well, sure. I mean, that's another thing. Like there are sections of Poland that Galicia, that was today that's Poland. It used to be part of Russia. It was part of Austro-Hungary. You're talking about, for centuries, that whole region switched between different empires and different hands. So I would say, I don't know, and very few people do, but from what I know about the history of that region, this is probably something that people could debate forever without really having a conclusive answer to it. And, I would assume that Putin's take on it is Russo-centric. But what do you expect? He's the leader of Russia. Of course it's Russo-centric.
Well, I got to say, I was very, very pleasantly surprised to find out I'm actually a quarter Ukrainian, since it affords me a lot of license to do a show like this. I mean, a Ukrainian Jew in these times, come on. I mean,
Sure.
that's like hitting the lottery.
That's the gold standard.
That's the gold standard. It doesn't get any better than that, baby. All right, let's keep reading. Not since George Galloway went to Baghdad and hailed the indefatigability. I have never heard that word in my life. Have you heard that word? What the fuck is that word? The indefatigability of Saddam Hussein.
No, I mean, that's a word.
You know that word? If
Sure.
you say so. Have we seen such a display of bum-sucking servility to a tyrant? In a way, it is unfair to blame Carlson for his abject performance. See, this is just a polemic rant. Notice how little substance is in here. He's just telling the audience, telling the reader what they're supposed to think, much in the way that MSNBC and CNN and Fox tell their viewers what they're supposed to think. He was not there to challenge. He was just the medium, the sewer, the hose by which the untreated slurry of Putin's message could be sprayed where Putin wants it most, over the fertile heartlands of America. Real poet here. He really had fun writing this, you could tell. The message to the American people was simple. This is not your problem, Putin was saying. It's a European problem. Stay out of this conflict. Let me finish it off, and soon we can all be at peace. It's a message that the Americans have heard before. Where, you ask? Well, in June 1940, shortly after Hitler invaded France, the newspapers of William Randolph Hearst secured an interview with the German dictator, mainly because Hearst had long shown sympathies with Hitler. The chosen journalist was a German American called von Wiegand, who had already conducted several positive interviews with the Fuhrer. Von Wiegand was duly ushered into a captured French chateau where he found Hitler, von Ribbentrop, and others, and with the help of detailed notes that he had prepared, Hitler gave the U.S. newspaper reporter his uninterrupted historical wisdom. "This is about Europe, not America," said Hitler. "The Americans have nothing to fear from Nazi Germany and no reason to interfere. He didn't particularly want to conquer Paris," he said. "He didn't even want to be waging war on the European continent. He just wanted to vindicate the ancient rights of the German-speaking peoples." Does that sound familiar? Now, this goes on for a few more paragraphs with the Hitler comparison, so we'll skip over that. But what I will say is, and this is why Aaron Mate in his stream yesterday, part of why I think, thought that answer was a little bit long-winded. Not that it didn't have a point, but that history was not cited as justification for invading Ukraine. He was citing that as the run-up to why he felt that this current Ukrainian government and the Western forces behind it posed a security threat. Now, I do understand how those waters could be muddied when you spend as much time as you did talking through this history. It sounds like, well, he is just trying to rebuild his empire, right? If he really feels that, Russia has this historical claim to this land. He did lay out that case, but then he also used that to set up a case for why he felt threatened in the moment. And why wouldn't he feel threatened in the moment? I mean, would we not feel threatened if Russia parked missiles in Mexico? There'd be no Mexico,
right?
Under those circumstances,
of course.
Right.
Well, and this is where I'll say, as much as I'm not, and very few people are qualified to really parse out the historical accuracy of what he laid out. I think, if you know anything about the history of that region, what he was starting to get into about Hungarians being in the West and all of that, yes, it is a hodgepodge and a jumble of different people who have moved around and changed places and been under this empire and that empire. So the idea that Russia has historic claims in that region, sure. Yeah. I mean, I took away from it overall, like, hey, you could call this Ukraine, but it wasn't always called Ukraine. It was called Russia at various times. At certain times, it was part of Poland. At certain times, Hungary had part of it. And that's true of that region generally. That if you start getting into historical claims like that, sure. Like it kept swapping around between different people for a long time.
Yeah, I heard Nick on RBN stream yesterday. He had Zoya on, who said, and I had never heard this, but she said that Ukraine means at the edge. U is at, Ukraine is the edge. So if Ukraine means at the edge of what? It will be at the edge of Russia.
Well, he said that. Putin
right?
said that.
Yeah. Oh, Putin said that. I didn't even recall that.
Putin brought that up. He said that it meant in Russian like a border area, like an edge area.
Oh, that's funny. I forgot that he said that. Maybe that was part of what I watched with the sound off. I watched half of it with the sound off, locked in my room.
It's funnier.
Yeah,
that
so
way.
nobody would bother me.
You played it with Dark Side of the Moon.
Right.
Yeah, you have to start the first time he says Ukraine.
Exactly. He goes on, why on earth should he be trusted now to respect any peace deal if the Ukrainians tried to do one? So I skipped over quite a long-winded section of Hitler comparisons. We pretty much get the gist there, do we not? So why on earth should he be trusted now to respect any peace deal, even if the Ukrainians tried to do one? He obviously can't be trusted over Poland or the Baltic states or anywhere in the vast periphery of the former Soviet Union. So I pray that the people of the U.S. are able to see through last night's unholy charade of an interview. I know how many U.S. congressmen and women have been fans of Tucker Carlson, and I say, remember Charles Lindbergh, remember the America Firsters, remember how many American legislators at first opposed involvement with the war. with Hitler. Well, they were wrong then, and the Tucker Carlsonites are grievously wrong about Putin today. To all those Republicans who are currently blocking aid to Ukraine, I say, for God's sake, remember who you are. Remember when people thought that this guy was like the British version of Trump because of the Brexit stuff? Turns out, not quite. Not quite. Trump just said at a rally last night. What did he say? He said, I'll tell Russia to attack the Allies if they don't pay us, or something like that. Quite a different tune Boris Johnson is singing, I'd say.
Okay. I mean, it is lines like that that make Trump the lovable scamp that he is.
I'll tell him. Go ahead. You are the heirs of Ronald Reagan, the leaders of the last best hope of Earth. You cannot make America great again by selling out Ukraine and allowing Putin to use violence to rebuild the Soviet empire. Again, the three terms laid out to avoid this whole war in the first place were neutrality for Ukraine, not non-existence of Ukraine, neutrality for Ukraine, Russian recognition of Crimea, and independence for those eastern regions. That's it. Like, what part of this don't you understand? That's all it would have taken to avoid all of this bloodshed. So how could you say that Ukraine was the first domino to fall and then so too will all of Europe? It's just, it makes no sense.
Well,
it makes no sense.
And also, Putin has been in charge of Russia for 24 years. Where's the genocide?
Right.
Where's the horrible racist ethno-state? I mean, you're making this comparison to Hitler. 24 years would be a pretty long time to hide the fact that you're some kind of genocidal psychopath.
Exactly. Yes.
He is a cold-eyed, very competent, very knowledgeable world leader. And in the end, by comparison to our own nation and the things that we support, even on a level of claiming that he's bloodier, that's a joke. Go to the Marcus Aurelius principle, which is one of those rules to live by. How do you know a thing? By what it does. How many deaths are we responsible for versus how many deaths Russia is responsible for? Even now with Ukraine. During Putin's reign over the last 24 years, we are responsible for millions upon millions upon millions of deaths. How many deaths is Russia responsible for? Pre-Ukraine, it would have been almost a negligible number.
Right.
Now you're talking how many? I mean, basically Ukraine over the last 24 years.
Yeah.
So who's the monster? Who's the bad guy? The idea that you're representing powers that have caused untold destruction, death, and you're in the midst of a genocide now, supporting a genocide now, and Putin is the bad guy? Putin is the dangerous leader?
On the contrary, by investing only a fraction of the U.S. defense budget, you can help those valiant Ukrainians to turn the tide, put Putin back in his box, and therefore help secure the Euro-Atlantic area for regeneration without actually risking a single U.S. soldier. Oh, that's nice. Again, he's saying, yeah, you could just, the Ukrainians they'll get themselves killed. What do you need to involve yourself? Hey, it's a bargain for you. You can show the world that trying to change borders by force will lead to disaster, because the greatest lie of all, and the one Putin hoped most to project by his interview, is that the Russian leader is bound to win. He is no more invincible than Adolf Hitler. In fact, he is bound to lose, which obviously, what a ridiculous point. We've been through that a million times. He has already suffered colossal losses, but that is not the point. Whatever Ukrainian territory he temporarily occupies, he can never conquer the spirits. He didn't seem to set out to conquer the spirits. What he wanted, I said a million times on this show. I said it a few minutes ago, so I won't repeat it. He laid out what he wanted. Didn't want to conquer the spirit of Ukraine. Didn't even want Kiev. Didn't want Ukraine. He didn't want NATO on his border. If he takes Ukraine, guess what? NATO's on his border. The whole point is to have a neutral zone.
He doesn't want to have to defend against Ukraine.
Exactly.
Against NATO, rather.
Against NATO, right. Exactly. I hope and believe that if President Trump is elected again, he will confound his critics, turn his party round, and complete the work that he began when he became the first U.S. president to give arms to the Ukrainians. I say that because in the end, all U.S. presidents know that our collective security is indivisible. In the end, the Americans can be relied upon to do the right thing, having exhausted, as the old saying has it, all the available alternatives. Tucker Carlson did us all a favor last night in the sense that he proffered the alternative, a Putin victory, the destruction of Ukraine, and the descent of much of Europe once again into darkness and fear. It cannot and must not happen. Okay, so I want to just focus, before we wrap this segment, on this first sentence here. He did not challenge the ludicrous suggestion that the UK government persuaded the Ukrainians to fight on rather than surrender to Putin's tender mercies in the spring of 2022. So Boris Johnson's argument here is that he didn't go to disrupt a peace deal or sabotage peace talks. He just went to let Ukrainians know that he has their back. And I took as a source for this...
Pep talk.
Yeah, exactly. I went out of my way to be overly diplomatic here. I took a write-up from the Kiev Post, Ukraine's global voice, right? So you can't accuse me of cherry-picking biased information from my point of view. Total nonsense. Boris Johnson denies accusations of sabotaging the Ukraine peace deal. This was from either December 23 or January 24. It's a fairly recent write-up. Just going to read a very brief part of it. Former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has strongly rejected the claims that he interfered with peace negotiations between Ukraine and Russia in the spring of 2022. In an interview with The Times, he labeled them as, quote, total nonsense and Russian propaganda. Johnson asserted that during a conversation with Ukrainian President Zelensky following the peace talks in Istanbul, he just, quote, expressed concerns about the nature of the potential agreement. He assured Zelensky of the UK's unwavering support for Ukraine, stating that the country would back them by 1,000%. So that's a write-up from Ukraine's global voice. Like I said, I went out of my way to pick a source that I knew would be as hostile as possible to what I'm about to say, which is that this is the most obvious crock of shit ever. He's saying, no, I'm not there to get in the way of things. I'm just here to say, you sure you want to take this? Because listen, if you fight this out, we got your back. We got your back. We're going to back you 100%. No, he's not there to make war. He's not there to make war. He's just there for moral support. That's why he went out there. He couldn't have communicated that moral support via telegram or whatever. Right.
I'm just saying, the people that I talk to, they're saying maybe you should keep fighting.
Maybe you should keep fighting. Hey, we got your back.
It's going to be good for you. It's going to be good for everybody. You back out, we're not going to be happy.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Amazing. Indeed. Janice Anderson, thanks to the $4.99, current administration could place a cap on pricing as occurred in the past. Also, people in
Nixon
my neighborhood.
Did that, right?
What's that?
Nixon did price controls.
I think he did price controls, yeah. I think so. That rings a bell. Also, people in my neighborhood aren't having problems with their chickens. No? I didn't hear about the chicken story, but I will look into it, see if there's anything there. Here we go. I almost missed this rumble rain here from the Real Just in Time. I'll get that copied and pasted into the system right now. Folks, please hit that like button. We have a huge crowd in here. 2784 in YouTube, 1425 in Rumble. So a combined over 4,000 live viewers. How do you like that? Thanks for being here on Sunday morning. Sunday morning, good time slot, huh?
I am telling you, there's a noticeable dip on Meet the Press today.
Yeah. No. Yeah, Due Dissidence takes ratings from Meet the Press. P. Walker.
Failing Meet the Press.
Failing low ratings Meet the Press. If you take out produce from your typical Western supermarket, everything inside is reduced to about 6 companies. They offer an illusion of choice.
Yep.
Thank you, P. Walker. Thanks for the thumbs up. J.M. Henry the Shazzo says he'd buy that shirt. Oh, the Commie Nazi shirt? Yeah. Indeed. RBGH fam, in my opinion, the price gouging angle is used to protect MMT. In reality, more currency for the same or less goods always leads to inflation worldwide. I'm sure it happens, but I'm not sure it's the main culprit, or don't think it's the main culprit. Rumble would be awesome if it would play a video. I get they got to do ads, but when ads take 10 minutes to load, it makes the product completely useless. Love DD, but sadly can't leave East Berlin yet. No, not yet, Joe Mama. Thank you, though. And yeah, I know some of the load times on Rumble can be a little slow, but they've been working for me recently. Certainly, like when I switch from Wi-Fi to data on my phone is when I have a problem there. Have the shit libs who were around in 1988 forgotten that Biden was a pathological liar? Yeah, that was the plagiarism episode that year. Yeah, no, they that all gets memory hold. Obama beat HRC, thanks P. Walker, in Iowa in 2008 because he promised his DOJ would go after the food cartels that were abusing farmers. Obama had zero intention to do so. Is that so? I followed that campaign as closely as I guess a 21-year-old would, but I did not hear that. That would be interesting to look into. Thank you, P. Walker. L. Walker, thanks for the $1.49. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Henry DeShazo again. Throughout my childhood, thanks for the $10 on my family ranch. We raised 16,000 chickens every 6 weeks. $16,000 worth of chickens for Pilgrim's Pride. It's a rocket. Don't buy diseased birds. It's a racket. Don't buy diseased birds for meat. Thank you, Henry.
That's interesting.
Interesting to know. Check out Matt Stoller, says John in Minnesota. Big Substack on monopoly and antitrust. Won't vote Dem, but I'll note any work being done on antitrust will go away with Trump. Yeah, I believe that. Scott George, Russell, take this 5 and get some boudin. What is that? Boudin? What is that? That's a New Orleans thing?
It's a New Orleans thing. How about I buy a hand grenade?
Yeah.
YouTube, that's a drink.
Right.
It's a drink in New Orleans.
It's a cocktail.
Yes, it's a cocktail.
Yes. Celeste Holmes. 11 or so food processors mysteriously went up in flames in 21 and 22. Yeah, I remember that too. Remember that? Where all these food processing plants were catching fire and the cows were dying?
No,
yeah, I remember seeing that all over the place.
I missed that.
Yep. Okay. Henry DeShazo. Man, Henry DeShazo is making it rain today, and you gave us a $50 donation later. Why don't we give a cowbell for Henry now? We'll give him 2. One for all these combined chats, and then one for the $50 chat. So thank you, Henry. Very appreciative of your kindness this morning.
Oh, yeah. We forgot to cowbell him.
Yeah. Keaton. Produce has everything to do with where you are. L.A. produce is irradiated. New York is not. Yeah, I would imagine that, it would make sense. That it would matter where you are in relation to where the produce is grown too. Thank you, Henry.
What do you mean irradiated?
Yeah, I don't know what that word means in that context either.
Wouldn't it be giant then?
Yeah. Well, I noticed like the apples I buy last a long time because they grow apples in New York. So the apples I buy last a long time. Like that's not.
You know what? You're right. Apples last like forever.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. But the other stuff, the stuff that's grown, further away.
No, lettuce, tomatoes, strawberries, all that shit goes bad really fast. Broccoli.
Very, very quickly. Dave Dillerai, thanks for the $20. Put this 20 towards the book Chaos by Tom O'Neill. Would make for a nice plane ride listen, but get the book also because it has 60 pages of endnotes and glossy pics too.
Which book is that?
Chaos by Tom O'Neill.
I might have it. Like I bought books. No, I have it. I had a bunch of books in my queue, but they're still sitting there back in New York.
I
bought that.
Leon, I don't know who this is, did nothing wrong. Do you know who that is?
It was my 4th grade teacher. I still have I have a lawsuit with the state. That's probably one of the relatives.
DC's weighing in. I'd like to express my gratitude and extend my appreciation to both of you for your channel. Keep kicking ass. Take care. Thank you, Anton. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Appreciate that very much, folks. The amazing Blumpkin. Speaking of buffoons, Boris is on the team poster. Yes, indeed. Henry says, beautifully put, Russell. Dead on. That was probably your Putin monologue there. Thank you, Henry. All right, we'll get to Henry's big one, and then we'll break for our last segment, and then we'll read the rest of our chats here. Aaron Fishman, thanks for the $4.99. Never trust a man who looks like he combs his hair with a balloon. I love you guys. Thanks for everything you do. Yeah, exactly. I mean, look at this. Look at this. I mean, what? I mean, talk about.
Oh, I thought you meant Keaton.
No, he's talking about this.
I'm like,
guy.
I shouldn't let that guy handle the money.
Talk about this fucking idiot. I mean, look at what an embarrassment.
No, you look at him, and this is in the same exact week that you have Biden looking like, the Frankenstein monster responding to flash bulbs at that fucking news conference.
Right.
And then you look at Putin. Who would you rather be led by?
Yeah, right.
Honestly,
Yeah.
who would
Who's
you
a
rather
more
be led
competent
by?
leader? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Who's more in control?
No, and you pointed out it's not just Putin. Like all of these leaders from the global south, from the so-called third world, from the sometimes called second world, they seem like people who are qualified to leave a country.
Yeah, they're much more statesman-like. Yeah.
They're dignified. They have complex command of language and oratory. And you look at Boris Johnson. Yes, we have to. It's like somebody took a mole off Churchill's ass and tried to clone him off it, and this is what you got.
Exactly. No, just embarrassing, ridiculous. Boring the clown is so full of shit his breath stinks. Thank you, Scott George. And thank you, Henry. All right, we need another cowbell for Henry is the big one. Thank you, Henry, for the $50. It's very kind of you today. Guys, the recent clip with that Down syndrome kid on the Ukraine side was demoralizing. Awful, just awful from the Mongoloid's point of view, putting a mortar in wrong way around his and handler kicking him and cussing him for doing so. Awful. Yeah, it sounds
awful. Jesus, I didn't see that.
I have not seen that either. But
my God.
Absolutely sounds horrible. That really killed our mood, although we're about to kill the mood even more with this last segment. Thank you, Sparky. Great work, Russell and
Thank
Keaton.
you, Sparky.
Appreciate that,
He
Sparky.
chats on the JD show a lot, too.
Yeah, Sparky is over there as well.
Sparky gets around.
Gets around that Sparky. Okay, I'll take a few more here, and then we'll do our last segment of the day. Folks, please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys for being very generous with your super chats today. They are very, very helpful in keeping us going. Just a reminder, if you hit us up with a lot of super chats per show, you can, for the same price, take $5 of a super chat and put it on the Patreon. This way you get access to all those perks in exchange for your support as well. So that's patreon.com/DoDissidents, DoDissidents.substack.com. And you can also join our locals over on Rumble. Hit that join button right underneath the screen. Thank you all very much. Jack Carolyn, Germany, Professor Gassam how do you say that name? Ghassan Hagi compared Israel to Nazis illegal in Germany and fired. UK David Miller case makes anti-Zionism protected by law. I read a little bit about that David Miller case. I'd like to look into that more. Maybe I'll do that on Tuesday. Hobbs 45, Boris Johnson. So in conclusion, let's give money to some Nazis. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, after all the Hitler talk. Yeah, that's the other irony of this whole thing. David, thank you for the $1.99. Appreciate that very much. Okay, let's do our final segment of the night here, or of the morning, I should say. So Israel has apparently a last phase of combat in store for Gaza, and this reported by the AP. Israel seeks to evacuate Palestinians jammed into a southern Gaza city ahead of an expected invasion. Now, if you look at that photo, this is of the city of Rafah, which is in southern Gaza, right near the border where they would cross into Egypt if they could. Expected invasion. By expected invasion, they mean expected ground invasion. They've already bombed this supposed safe zone quite heavily. So let's read from the AP. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Friday said he has ordered the military to prepare a plan to evacuate civilians from Rafah ahead of an expected Israeli invasion of the densely populated southern Gaza city. The announcement came after heavy international criticism, including from the U.S., of Israeli intentions to move ground forces into the city that borders Egypt. Rafah had a pre-war population of roughly 280,000, and according to the United Nations, is now home to some 1.4 million additional people living with relatives in shelters or in sprawling tent camps after fleeing fighting elsewhere in Gaza. So just think about that. A population of 280,000 has now multiplied by about 5 times to 1.4 million. That's how overcrowded this is. Israel says that Rafah is the last remaining Hamas stronghold in Gaza after more than 4 months of war. It's impossible to achieve the goal of the war of eliminating Hamas by leaving 4 Hamas battalions in Rafah, Netanyahu's office said. On the contrary, it is clear that intense activity in Rafah requires that civilians evacuate the areas of combat. Now, I want to give you a sense of how densely populated this city is now. So this is Rafah on October 13th of 2023, before the population fled from the north to the south. And in this slide, this is Rafah now.
Jesus.
So look at this. This is from January 2024.
Wow.
Same satellite shot, October, January. That gives you a sense of the scale of the horror that we are about to witness if this ground invasion goes forward. The operation will be a challenge on many levels. Oh, you think so? It remains unclear where civilians can go. The Israeli offensive has caused widespread destruction, especially in northern Gaza, and hundreds of thousands of people do not have homes to return to. In addition, Egypt has warned that any movement of Palestinians across the border into Egypt would threaten the 4-decade-old peace treaty between Israel and Egypt. The border crossing between Gaza and Egypt, which is mostly closed, serves as the main entry point for humanitarian aid. Israel already has begun to strike Rafah from the air. Airstrikes overnight and into Friday hit 2 residential buildings in Rafah, while 2 other sites were bombed in central Gaza, including one that damaged a kindergarten-turned-shelter for displaced Palestinians. 22 people were killed, according to AP journalists, who saw the bodies arriving at hospitals. So you see, this is how densely populated this city is now from the air. Not only are these people crammed into Rafah, not only can they not get through the border to Egypt, because Egypt, scumbags that they are saying we won't take them, but also they can't go back north. There's nothing to go to back north. They've already been evacuated down here. So where are they supposed to go? This is an impossibility. An impossibility. We're going to take a look at a quick CNN report so you can see this city in motion.
Meanwhile, in Rafah, once deemed a safe zone, UNICEF estimates that there are now more than 600,000 children among the over 1 million people in the area, many taking shelter in these sprawling tent cities. The southern city has, for weeks, come under relentless airstrikes by the Israeli military, who say they are targeting Hamas. But now, a looming ground operation is stoking fears that Rafah could become, as one aid group has described it, a zone of bloodshed. If by some misfortune there's an invasion of Rafah, 2/3 of the population will die, Jabr says. We can't get out of Rafah. We have no other alternative.
I'm just going to pause it for a second there. Of course they can't get out. Look at behind him. Look at the street there.
Look at this. Look at this.
You can't even walk down the street in Rafah. They're going to evacuate 1.4 million civilians from Rafah. Because don't forget, according to Benjamin Netanyahu, they've already killed 20,000 Hamas soldiers, which means there's only 5,000 left. Now, of course, that 20,000 number is total bullshit. But taking his words at face value, that means you're going to displace 1.4 million people so that you can theoretically kill the remaining 5,000. That in itself is against international law. Forced displacement as a means of collective punishment is a violation of
international law. The entire war is collective punishment.
Well, the entire war, but I'm just talking about in this micro example here. Look at the street. You can't even walk down the street there. They're going to evacuate 1 million people from there?
Right.
I mean, it's absurd on its face.
Israel says it is now calling for a mass evacuation of civilians in the southern city ahead of a planned ground offensive. But it is almost impossible to fathom where else these civilians can turn to. But Rafah has not only become a vital lifeline for the displaced, it is also a crucial gateway for humanitarian aid crossing over from Egypt. And many in the international community are now sounding alarm bells over Israel's warning.
And I'm especially alarmed by reports that the Israeli military intends to focus next on Rafah, where hundreds of thousands of Palestinians have been squeezed in a desperate search for safety.
The US State Department has warned that it cannot support an Israeli military operation in Rafah without serious planning for civilians there, with US President Joe Biden on Thursday describing Israel's actions in Gaza as, quote, over the top.
Over the top.
But Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has already dismissed a proposal from Hamas for a prolonged truce, which would see a phased withdrawal of Israeli troops from Gaza and a gradual release of hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners.
Look at this. This is the supposed safe zone that these people were told to flee to from the north, number one. Number two, this is pre-invasion Rafah. So in other words, this is just a result of the air campaign.
Right.
Now they're going to do a ground invasion. This is the before picture of Rafah.
Well, and you can see they haven't hit it as hard because it doesn't look like the surface of the moon.
Right. There's still some buildings that are standing.
We did a story on Jimmy's about the IDF running this secret telegraph channel where they would boast about their atrocities, and I showed a couple of the videos. There were other things I didn't use of them showing bombed mosques and celebrating, showing bombed hospitals. That's what they're going to do to this. And they're going to say, "Oh, it was because of Hamas." The level, I know we're not going to wind up doing it today, but you also sent me a video of soldiers making fun of
a journalist,
Palestinian female journalist,
heckling her while she's on the air,
news.
trying to do the
heckling
report.
her, making fun of her, with absolutely no concern about the fact that they're on camera. And if you look at how those soldiers behaved, they're Nazis. They're Nazis. This is what you would expect from Nazis. And you look at how they're acting, what kind of regard do you think they're going to have for civilian life when they go into this territory? These people, these sick bastards who are involved in not only the IDF, but the Israeli government and Israeli society. I mean, more and more, we did that article about how all these liberal anti-Netanyahu Israelis have found their inner Zionists now in the face of this war. It didn't act as the final break for them. It actually reinforced their devotion and nationalism to Israel, going back to what Ilan Pappy said, that there's no such thing. Oh, it wasn't him, it was somebody else. But an Israeli, basically,
there's no such thing as a liberal Israeli.
There's no such thing as a liberal Israeli. Yeah, I mean, at this point, even with October 7th, which was a horrible event, we don't in any way condone. But I do have to ask, what kind of people have a music festival next to a concentration camp?
Right. Exactly.
Why are you comfortable doing that?
Right. Who would go there? Who would go there?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, how sick a society do you have to have that doesn't strike you as strange? And I look, I understand, man. People get used to all kinds of things. I mentioned when I got back from Europe, I noticed the homeless people who are mentally ill and not being cared for on the subway in a way that I don't normally, because you get used to it.
Right. You just get used to it. Right.
So you grow up in this sick fascist regime where, the whole narrative you've absorbed, even if you're liberal, is that the Palestinians are badly led, right? It's not their fault, but they have these terrible leaders, and what can we do? We can't just allow ourselves to be attacked, so we're forced in this position, and we have no partner for peace. Israelis have dozens of justifications for what they do. And that's how you wind up a person who would go to a music festival outside a concentration camp and not think twice about it.
Right. What does Israel's leaders say about the people of Israel? What do our leaders say about us? Right. What does Boris Johnson say about the people of the UK? Right. I mean, these leaders don't just fall from the sky. Right. That's what George Carlin said. He says, you think these leaders come out of nowhere? These are the best we've got. These are the people who we choose to promote. Right. It says something about the society. Right. In Israel is obviously unique circumstances. And obviously we're seeing the results of that. But it's true of it. You could say the same thing about us to a large extent.
Well, you very much can. Well, this is what really strikes me, and that's why I mentioned that in regards to Putin. And I think it's hard, even for a lot of left people, to see ourselves as the evil empire that we've always claimed to be fighting against. We are that empire,
right? Of course,
by the numbers. Who is responsible for death, destruction, displacement of civilians? Who's responsible for that? It's not China. It's not Russia. It's us.
And somebody asked, how can this be stopped? Well, the United States has apparently told Israel, don't go in with ground forces here. Let's see if they listen. And let's see what happens when they don't.
They're not going to listen.
Right? Don't hold your breath. Don't hold your breath. So we'll see what happens.
They know that we will not cut them off.
Right.
So at that point, why would they listen? That's all they care about.
At this point, you could cut them off. This is the last phase. That's why, I've been saying this isn't going to go on forever. This isn't like the war in Ukraine that could go on for a couple of years. There's not going to be any of Gaza left. There already isn't any more of Gaza left besides Rafah, basically. That's why there's 1.4 million people there. City of 280,000. Now there's 1.4 million. And to think of what's about to happen is just horrible. It's unspeakable, but we'll see. I mean, like I said, in this instance, the United States said, don't do it. What happens when they do? We'll see what that press conference is like. I'm sure that'll be a hell of a press conference, for Matthew Miller or whoever that fucking asshole is that they send out there with the eyeglasses. We'll see what they have to say for this in the aftermath of this, which could be the worst of this war. I mean, it's hard to imagine that the worst could be yet to come, but it could be when you look at the situation there.
Well, this is,
Did you do the math?
Well, it's funny, and this is a comparison a lot of people made from the beginning, how, one of our favorite stories in cinema as Americans, particularly Americans, love the story because of our own origin story of the feisty, under-equipped rebels against the evil empire. And you always have the scene in those movies of the innocent civilians who are about to be wiped out, and then they get saved, right? All right, well, these are those innocent civilians who are about to be blown up by the Death Star or overwhelmed by the evil forces of the evil empire. And we are that empire. And unfortunately, there is no third force to come in there and stop this from happening. It's just a desperate feeling of helplessness. And the Israelis have certainly made clear they're not going to stop for humanitarian reasons.
Yes, indeed. Sparky, thanks for the $5. Price controls don't work without broadly organized rationing. It quickly causes shortages. Nixon tried it, and it was an obvious screw up. Thank you, Sparky. Not Noir, can I please audition for skit show Whitestone Dude? I had a hilarious short at Sundance. I used to be a shit lib. Yeah, send us some stuff. Send us a reel.
You mean you're from Whitestone, Queens? You must.
Yeah, it must be
what he means.
Yeah, but send us a reel. DoDissidence@gmail.com.
Yeah, send us something, man. I have a bunch of ideas for these, and I just need people to do them with.
Right. Billy Dink. The culprit for our challenges is the oligarchic control and corporatism plaguing our nation. How do we overcome this? Well, that's tough. Yeah, right, exactly. No, look, I mean, there's no way to do it through either two major party, and there's obviously no third party that's willing to, take the reins and actually emerge as a serious threat. So you have to look outside of the political system. Ultimately, labor movements are a big part. Anti-war movements are a big part. Cory Bush, there's a big story. We're definitely going to do this on Tuesday with Kit because it's kind of in his wheelhouse. Cory Bush is losing by 22 points to her AIPAC-funded challenger. Yeah, so it looks like she's going to lose her seat in a few months. Thank you, Billy. Mighty Mulatto, Uranium mining contaminated ground and surface water used to grow crops. Thank you, Mighty Mulatto. Food is irradiated
I say
to kill
once again,
bacteria and
aren't we
viruses.
supposed to get? Aren't we supposed to get kaiju lettuce then?
Yeah, right.
That's what I've been led to believe.
Kuznetsky says food is irradiated to kill bacteria and viruses. That sounds dangerous. Thank you, Kuznetsky Bassane. Government needs to reset, says Hisham M. Thank you very much. End the sea blockade, and who's doing the blockade? Yeah, look, I mean, this is just, I mean, the fact that Egypt won't let them in is horrible, too. It's horrible, too. Like, it's just a horrible situation all around. This is a global failure. That's why I said on, the first show we did after October 7th, I said the world has failed Gaza. The world, it's really been just an absolute failure of the overall human race, honestly. But thank you for the question. Sparky, Nixon may have tried wage and price controls as a stopgap while the dollar transitioned to the petrodollar from gold-backed. Petrodollar was actually pretty good for the U.S. till fools messed it up. Thank you, Sparky. We'll hit a couple Rumble rants here. That one we already did. Good time for Keaton and Russ to go vegan. I will show them the way. Sounds like it. Do you think the AI celebs would be less creepy if they picked up a couple who didn't OD? I see a future where the CIA ironically resurrects people they whacked to tell us to vote for their puppet. Yeah, that's dystopia for you.
That's an interesting idea. Let's steal it.
Yeah, let's steal it. Letting wind noise ruin your stand-up audio is far more egregious when you have Boris Johnson's hair. Is he trying to feign spontaneity or just that stupid? Yeah, it's just pretty unbelievable. Unbelievable.
I'm going to pick B.
Yeah. Here we go. I got to copy this one over here. From the real Just in Time, invasion of Rafah might be designed to provoke regional all-out war. Why couldn't I post that in a super chat? Not sure. I'm not sure. Real Just in Time, but yeah, I mean, like I said, if there's no consequence, if we're warning them not to do it and we know they're going to do it anyway, that'll really expose quite a bit. I would love, like I said, I can't wait for the press conference.
Yeah, that's it. They send Jake Sullivan out there to do his "I'm not an automaton with no emotions" act.
Right.
Where he crinkles up his eyebrows as he talks about the suffering of the Palestinian people. I mean, it really is interesting. If you watch those speeches from him, it really is watching a psychopath convey feeling.
Right.
It's so clear that he doesn't give a shit.
Oh, of course.
These people, they have families.
Yeah.
It's like,
just like
somebody coached him.
Yeah. Yep. Invading Rafah is just a way to push Egyptians to accept the Palestinian refugees. It's sick. Great show as always. Never miss hearing it on JD. It's interesting theory.
And I think you're exactly right. I think you're exactly right. Well, that's what we've been saying. They're creating the conditions to the next step in their plan is, well, the United States has got to persuade the countries to take them, and they'll get the U.S. to give them money, bribes, to take the Palestinians. Well, while the rebuilding is happening as a humanitarian, they can't live there, and then they'll just never let them back in. Then they'll just send in the settlers.
Exactly. No, it's a good theory. Denazify Israel and build a better world with bricks, says Sparky. Thank you, Sparky. Appreciate that. Stu D, thanks for the $5. I can't stand the propagandistic terminology Israeli hostages and Palestinian prisoners, implying that Israel is just holding criminals, which is BS. Yeah, you're right. That does tend to suggest that the Palestinian prisoners aren't hostages themselves. We know that they hold kids in jail. A child, a 7-year-old kid will throw a rock at a tank,
Right.
They'll lock them up. So that's a hostage. That's not a
hostage.
legitimate prisoner. Kenman, the Zone of Interest Music Festival outside Gaza. Okay, folks, that is our show for today. Thank you all for showing up here at 10 a.m. We appreciate that very much. Join our newsletter, dudissidents.substack.com. That's really important. We'll let you know when we're on at a different time. Even if you can't join as a paid member, if you can, it helps us out tremendously. If you can't, it still helps us out a great deal if you join for free and join our newsletter. This way you know when and where we'll be going live. When we add our 4th stream, which is imminent, as soon as Russell gets back from London, we'll be doing 4 shows a week. On occasion, that 4th stream will be a Rumble exclusive stream. So it's important to join our Substack so you know not just when, but where we're going to be live as well. So with that said, we thank you all very much for being here.
It's over there. Hang on.
What's over there? Oh, the singing bowl. He forgot his singing bowl. With that said, I thank you very much all for being here today. This was a great crowd. This was pretty much a record crowd at an oddball time slot. We may have to take this into consideration. We may have to do these Sunday morning streams more often.
Do you think we should, then the people at Meet the Press are going to get mad.
I know,
Face
yeah,
the
we'll
Nation
have to
people, see. They've been bleeding audience for a long time. Do we want to do that?
Should we show mercy?
Friends of show, Face the Nation.
Friends of show, Face the Nation. Yes. Kuznetsky Bassane says U.S. ordinance instead of Zyklon B.
Yep.
Excuse me. Alrighty, folks. Well, that is our show. We thank you very much. Enjoy the Super Bowl. Enjoy the last hours of America before the Swifty coup takes us over. We'll be living in a different country by Tuesday night when we will see you again. I'll be live with Kit Cabello this Tuesday at 9 p.m. Russell will be out enjoying the Fat Tuesday festivities, and then we will see you all back here Thursday morning at 9 a.m. So full schedule this week. Things are a little bit back to normal, but not for long because Russell leaves for London next week. So thank you all very, very much for being here. It's a great pleasure to be with you this morning. We will see you back here Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. Until then, as we always say, be safe and be well.
Courage.
Please clap.